Hey, what's up, Scott Balcom here with Imagination Creation Films. And today, well, it's Friday and it's time for yet another fantastic live stream. And today is no exception because we actually have a brilliant, an amazing, a extremely talented stills and motion photographer who has traveled the world and the depths of the world as well. Let's let him introduce himself. Hey, Ivan, how are you?
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Go ahead and spend a second and just tell everybody just a brief amount about yourself.
My name is Ivan, and I'm a stills and motion photographer. I do primarily documentary work, and that's about it.
Fair enough. So,
pretty shy about this stuff. So.
That's no problem at all. We'll try to uncover a little bit of that if we can here through the story. So when did you like? I mean, some people it's like a lightning bolt that hits them. Other people they just kind of figure it out and determine. But when did this, capturing through a lens? When did it strike you? When did you start feeling that?
Well. So I've been taking photographs since I was a little kid. My grandfather gave me a, remember the old Brownie cameras?
Yeah.
Yeah, he gave me one of those when I think I was 8 or 9 years old. And so I started playing around with that. And, it was more of a toy at that point, obviously at 8 years old. But it was fun because I would go around and I would take pictures of my family, and I do that forced perspective kind of thing where I put like a Hot Wheel car or something really close and set it up.
Right.
So I had a lot of fun with that. And then, I really didn't play too much. I was, I'd have a camera with me every once in a while growing up. And it wasn't until 2007 when I made the switch to go professional, and even then, that was more of from a business standpoint when I started a production company, and so I guess 2008 is when I really started doing this full time as a photographer and cinematographer.
And was that Royal Galactic at that time, or was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was it's. Like I said, I've been taking photographs as an amateur all my life, and I remember even into the Marine Corps, I was taking photographs all the time. I remember I would get in trouble all the time, actually, because I'd always have the camera out. But I kind of lost the taste for photography after the Marine Corps because I had a lot of my equipment stolen. So I had your sea bag. I don't know if you know that, but it's like a duffel bag. And so when I actually got out of the Marine Corps, I had a 4-year journal that I had kept, and all my photographs and negatives and some uniforms and things like that were in the sea bag. And they were stolen. That sea bag was stolen just a few months after I got out. And I lost all of that. And so I kind of, at that point, put the camera away and it didn't focus on
right.
it for
a gut punch there.
yeah, that was hard. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started. Just toying around, probably like most of us, got a camera when we were little and just started playing. But I really didn't have any direction from my family as far as, that went. So they really didn't recognize that I was really into it. So there wasn't really that push from my parents to help me follow that path. I was kind of on my own for that stuff.
You didn't study or you just kind of screwed around with it until you got something you liked, or what?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, like you're capturing with photography, like you were saying, you're playing with the cars, little Matchbox cars and forced perspective. Did it come natural to you that you just like you could pick it up and get a great shot and just kind of develop it, or was that?
I don't know if they were great shots, but yeah, I mean, it came naturally. And I guess you're kind of, I don't know, you hear that some people are, you either have the eye or you don't. the way that my brain works. I see space. And I don't. So I don't really. I'm not a spreadsheet kind of person. So I see space. I see. I can walk into a room and remember that room 20 years later. And so it's yeah. So I think obviously as a young kid, I really didn't know what I was doing. But I would try and compose a nice image and make everything look nice and have the lines in the frame work together. And once I got a car, then I really, at 16 years old, and that's when I really started going out and kind of exploring. You have that independence, and I always had my camera with me. And so I would play with those, with landscapes, and I spent a lot of time in the desert because I grew up in northern Nevada, and so I would always go out to the desert and go explore those areas.
When did you start making money in this? How old were you, and what was it that actually got you some money?
So I started this in 2007. And so that's when we started. We formed a production company, myself and two partners. And so I started making money in 2007. And that's when I had, it's interesting how that happened too, because we kind of got lucky. It was kind of this perfect storm kind of thing, because it was when Red first came out. In fact, the camera hadn't been released yet. And so my business partner had actually put down a deposit, $1,000 deposit on 3 cameras. And before they were even a thing, they were, at that point, people didn't really think that they were actually real. Vaporware, they call it. And so we put the money down on these cameras, and because I was coming from a business, in my old career, I was in business development. I was more of the executive producer of the company, and and so we basically were on that trajectory for about a year. So less than a year for me acting as a producer, and we slowly would start pitching clients. And sorry, got lost a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
But so back to your question. So we started making money pretty quickly, actually, because we bought these cameras. We put the deposit down. We got the cameras, but none of the big rental houses were buying. Who had the cameras, and so my business partner was great at SEO for search engines. And so anytime someone would Google Red or high def HD cameras at that point, HVX 200. We were usually the first company to come up in the search. And so we started getting calls from some pretty big names down in LA to do camera tests and to rent the camera from us, because the rental houses down there didn't have it because they didn't believe it. A lot of these big productions didn't have it.
Right.
And so we took that, and from a business standpoint, I looked at that and I'm like, oh, well, we're just going to fucking lie our way out. Because I didn't want to go after this small local productions. That wasn't something that was interesting to me. And so we went to, companies like Microsoft and big companies, said, hey, we're working with XYZ, these big names. And it was true, but it was more like they were just renting our cameras. But
right. But you're working with them. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're working, and we had some really great imagery as well, that my other business partner was filming, and that I was filming. And so we had the creative jobs. And so we were able to get away with that white lie.
Well, that's called search engine optimization. Yes, well, look at all the brands we work with. So what was like the first job that, I mean, you're a humble guy, so it's hard to phrase it properly to get you to answer it. But what was the first job that you did where you thought, wow, I guess we're okay at this,
So we had a lot of little jobs, but Microsoft was actually a big deal for us, because we initially started out doing kind of small jobs for Microsoft, which in the scheme of production were still pretty great. and they had good budgets. And we were, in essence, going out and filming these in-house productions for all of these teams to talk to one another. So if they had like an idea for a piece of software or an idea for a piece of hardware and how their software would integrate with the hardware, we would go out and go across the United States and film these little segments, almost like lifestyle type of segments. And then it turned into getting library footage, just general 4K library footage. And this particular team that we worked with, we helped them build like their 4K backend so that they could work with 4K. We worked with one of the guys there who came from visual effects world down in Los Angeles. He was the guy who did, and he got it. So he was the guy who did Minority Report. So he's the guy who did all the UI for Minority Report.
Nice. And
he worked with Michael Bay, and so he really kind of took us under his wing, really, and kind of mentored us through the whole process. And in turn, we helped him with kind of building up 4K systems. And so we were doing a lot of these little jobs, and then they had this it was a 7-figure budget for this team that works directly with the CEO of Microsoft. And that was a kind of they call it a vision video, and they do one every 5 years, 6 years. And it kind of tells the story of Microsoft and where they're going to be with their user interface and their ideas in the future. Like that little hockey puck that they have for the Surface.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll show you a photograph of that, but I've got that. I've got that here. I'll show that to you. But we were filming that before it was even, we filmed this back in I think this was like 2000. Was it 2011, 2012 maybe? That we got this big job. So that was a 7-figure budget. We made some really good money off of that, and that was a really great learning experience, especially with having Will, who was at Microsoft, kind of mentor us through the process, and because that was a big production and it was global, and so we were on the road for like 3 months shooting in all over the world. And again, we were just up to that point, we were just doing these little things for Microsoft, and then we were doing our own little productions and pitching these little jobs. And then I was doing a lot of lifestyle footage capture. And so this was really the first job.
That's interesting. And you have stills or some BTS from that, or what would you have?
I don't from that. Okay. No. I don't. No.
Okay.
Well, actually, yes, I do. Hold on. I have. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I've just got lots of stuff to share. They're all over the place, so he's just got to assemble it however he wants.
Yeah. I don't know. Can you see this?
Yep. You want me to add it? Oh.
Yeah. You can show it. So this was. So we were down in one of our locations was down in the kelp fields in Tasmania. Southern island off of Australia, and you can tell I'm a newbie here because I've got my secondary regulator just floating around. It should be so I was kind of a newbie. Yeah, but I mean, this is the thing. I mean, so I had called, Mark. Oh, of course, Mark Toya.
Oh yeah.
So I had called Mark Toya and I said, hey, we're going down. We're going to be doing some underwater work, and I had done a little bit of scuba diving in the Marine Corps, and so I had limited. I was certified and I knew how to dive, but filming underwater is a completely different situation. And so I had called Mark Toya and asked him if he had any recommendations, and he introduced me to this really amazing guy named Simon Krispitz, and Simon's the underwater DP for like Deacons, and he did he works with James Cameron and all those guys. So this is a really big deal guy, and to have him on board was such a blessing because he was. Again, it was we're still. I mean, I'm still new at this in 2020. I don't think you ever get really good at this. Because you're constantly learning. You're all constantly learning. And so, anyway, so we had Simon kind of take us under his wing. And this is Simon here. Got a little selfie of us. But we had. So I sent him. I worked with him. Sent him a mood board. I sent him all the shots that I wanted to get underwater, and he worked with us to get those shots. And so we we had showed up there, and
so what were some of the things that stick out to you as things you need to know to even attempt to film underwater like this, other than having your regulator within?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is working with, because I had never really done anything like this before. And so sitting with Simon, who's your typical Australian, I don't mean that in a bad way, but he's your stereotypical, right. He's a big guy. He's a tough guy. He's very, very short with his words. But he was very kind and very patient with us. And so he let me, even though we hired him, I mean, he was really the boss for underwater. I'm a firm believer, let the experts do what they do best. And, he has the images that I wanted to get. With this, I was director of photography. So I just gave him the images that I wanted and to capture. And so we spent a day in rehearsals underwater, kind of getting it in play. And this was actually the first time that our actress, who is here, had actually scuba dived. So she had got her certification down in Phoenix, and I think she had her open water in some dirty lake where the visibility was like 3 inches down. And so he worked with her as well and really made her feel comfortable. We had 2 safety divers. That's, one of the keys is to have safety divers and have people backing you up, because you're not paying attention really to your environment around you, and that's what the safety divers are for. From a technical standpoint, he really showed me how to build out the underwater housings, to create a vacuum within the housing, to look for moisture, even a small little droplet of water inside that housing. So even if, for example, you were to sneeze and some of that moisture got in the housing, and then you seal it up, you do your vacuum, as soon as that thing shuts, it's almost instantaneous, because the amount of heat inside of these housings, it's pretty remarkable how hot it gets in there. It'll just vaporize and turn into humidity, and it'll cover the portal, fog up the portal, and so you have to be really cautious with that. And so that alone, watching him on a rocking boat with his air compressor blow out all the moisture of this thing, just seeing that was a life lesson in underwater photography. I mean, it's not something you would think about really, with a little droplet of water.
So this is a frame, a finished frame from what you were shooting?
It is.
Okay. So what, did you have to do any lighting here, or were you just using the sun?
We used zero light. It's all, so we were at about 60 feet here. Actually, we're probably about, I take that back, actually. I'm sorry. So as far as external lighting, no, we were completely daylight dependent. But if you look at her face,
right.
So what we did is we put LED strips, 2 LED strips. So this is a full face mask. So the air is actually blown into the mask, and she can talk. And they're called buddy phones. And so we're able to communicate to one another. And then we had an SDI cable going up to the boat where our director was, Will, and so he could see everything that we were filming, and he could actually talk to us. And it kind of sounds like the Chipmunks.
Right.
It sounds really odd, but it's kind of funny actually with Simon being such a tough Australian guy. I always used to tease you brush your teeth with Vegemite, don't you? But hearing his Australian deep voice, as a chipmunk was pretty.
Yeah, because I was kind of interested in how you were getting the light to kiss either side of her cheeks there, and I was like, with no light, that's weird. And that makes perfect sense. Yeah, cool.
And this is something that he had used. I think it was a James Cameron film that he shot about some underwater divers that were doing. I can't remember the name of the film, but it's the mask that he used in that film, and it was about cave diving. It was a narrative about cave diving. And it was really nice. So we balanced the camera. We just left it at 5600, and just focused on that.
Good comment. Good comment here from Soren that he loved your portraits of rural workers, cowboys, and girls since he first saw them. They're so intensely human and beautiful. Do you intend to make a documentary about their life at some point? I like that you take the time to be romantic and non-romantic about it.
Thanks, Soren. Good to see you. Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. It started out as more of going out. So I use the red for all of my still work, and it's a great portrait camera. It's probably the best tool, in my opinion. It's probably one of the best tools out there for portrait photography. And so I was just going out. That's the world that I'm from, in Northern Nevada. I have a lot of friends and family in that world, in that part of the country. And so I would go out to get portraits of these guys. And so I have all of these R3Ds, motion R3Ds. And so at a point I thought, well, I should probably start thinking about that. And so, yes, to cut it short, yes, that's the ultimate plan. There's still so much that I want to get, and it really is, what's the story? And there are a lot of there's so much nuance in that world. You could one of the areas that I want to focus on is grazing, and it's more of a political piece, but it's about grazing and the hardships that these guys have, just by nature of where they're at in the world, but then also with government agencies and environmental groups, and trying to tell a balanced story, because there are some environmental groups that are on point with some of their ideas, but there are some that are also misdirected and not on point, and that goes for both sides of that world. So, yeah.
Chad has a question. A lot of people have this question, is like, how do normal people like me get a chance to shadow one of your productions?
Honestly, man, it's super hard, because we do have, and I'll be honest about this, because I get this question quite a bit about people wanting to join on a production, and it's hard because we have our teams already in place, and generally with the stuff that I do, I'm kind of on my own usually, and when I say that, I mean I'm with maybe a handful of guys. We did a documentary in Madagascar where it was just myself, the director, the DIT, and our producer, and then our local fixers. And so to have somebody on a production that we don't know in some of these environments that we're in, it's a risk we're not really willing to take. And so, however, there's always a possibility, I guess, and I would hope that there would be possibilities for things like that to happen. And I hope that when I'm much more successful than I am, like a Mark Toya, for example, Mark Toya does that, where he'll bring people on that he knows and that he's developed a relationship with, and he kind of gets a sense of who they are, and he has the resources to be able to do something like that. I don't have those resources. I'm a photographer. I'm poor, and the work that we do is very, like I said, it's very tight and small crews, and so. But I would read, someone like a Mark Toya, those guys that are really high up doing a lot of commercial work. I think with commercial work, there's much more opportunity for that kind of mentorship or that kind of shadowing. If for you, I don't know where you're based, but I would look at some of the production houses locally and start really developing honest and genuine relationships with some of these guys. And you'll run into people. I'm a firm believer in quarks, our little vibrations in ourselves. And we either repel one another or we're attracted to one another. And so if you can align your quarks with a production, a producer or a director in your hometown, I would say, really nurture that relationship, and that could potentially, it will happen. It's just being persistent and with the right people.
That is a good way to look at things, and I think everybody honestly should work as best they can to try to never repel. I mean, it's not always possible, but the more receptive your quirks are to other people's quirks and vice versa, I think things happen for the better, for sure.
Yeah, and you're gonna, there are people that certainly don't like me, and there are people that I don't like, and that's just without even really having a relationship with them at all. I mean, it's life. Just the way it works, right?
Yeah.
And so, don't waste your time. If someone's doing something, and this is the hard part, because if someone's doing something really cool that you want to be a part of, but the guy's an absolute asshole or blowhard, or his ego is bigger than his talent, you don't want to be involved with that guy anyway. Or when I say guy, I mean male or female, but you don't want to be involved in that with those people. You're better off, aligning yourself with somebody that you really genuinely like and respect. And even if they're not that experienced, just getting out there and just doing shit.
And nobody wants to work with an ass. That is absolutely true.
Absolutely not.
So what are we looking at here? This plane.
Oh, this was just kind of the type of travel that we do sometimes. This was in where was this? This is I think this is Rwanda, or this is sorry, this is not. This is in Uganda, and then that is in Rwanda. My goofy self taking a selfie in front of the thing. This helicopter, and this is a funny story actually. Sorry, I don't know the trajectory of this. I don't know if you want me to jump in a little.
Yeah, you feel free to just,
I pulled this up as an example that when you have, when we're in these kind of environments and we have, limited availability as far as seating and equipment and money, it's hard to bring people onto productions that we haven't worked with before, that we don't know. And at times it can be really uncomfortable. When we were in Madagascar, we were there for just over 3 weeks filming a documentary there. It was 100 degrees plus and 100 degrees humidity, and we were working 7 days a week straight, no rest days, and I would say we were working 12, 13, 14-hour days. And you really get a sense of people at that point, how they are. And that's the last place that you want to introduce somebody new to your team and find out it's not what they were meant to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is just kind of, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to flip through, or if you want to.
Yeah, well, I want to go back because to talk about, so this is the very first image that I pulled from the red, from a legitimate job. And the thing that attracted me, my love is with still photography. I do motion, but my love is with still photography. And so this is one of the very first images that I pulled, and we were shooting with the Red One. And so this was, this is my first really playing with stills, with the red. And, like this one here, look at the menu, it's 4096 on the horizontal. But this is when, in using the Red One, the Epic wasn't even thought of at that point.
Right.
This really kind of set with me and made me really excited about doing this work. And this was the point where I transitioned from producer, kind of business guy, to the lead cinematographer, photographer for a company. So this is so I'm actually one of the litters, and so they're pulling me up. And so you can see I've got the Red One there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was kind of the setup. And it was pretty cool. It was that was a fun time. And that really kind of got me excited for the possibilities of this new world that I had jumped into. And so we kind of started doing some work with there's a local special forces unit that works with the sheriff's department. And it's part of the sheriff's department, Homeland Security, I think, and a couple other groups. And so we would go up, and this is when I really started loving filming and getting photographs. So these are all Red One stills. And so you can see there. I can't really explain. Yeah. So that was.
That shows a lot of power, even of the Red One, which, I'm not a huge fan of the MX, the Mysterium sensor, but I mean, look at that. That's a cinema camera taking beautiful stills.
Yeah, and in this one, you know, if I wanted to, I can open the shadows with this because of the dynamic range, but I really wanted her to be the point of focus. And you know, as with anything, these photographs as standalone, you try and tell stories with standalone photographs, but when you're doing kind of this editorial work, you want it's context, right? So you'll have multiple images and a story to go along with it. And
there's Mr. Fool Control right there.
Hey, Mikal. And yeah, and then we got the Epic, and that changed everything for us as well, especially for me and still photography. This is out of the Bonneville Salt Flats. I
love Bonneville.
Yeah,
such a weird place.
It is, man. It's crazy. It's a beautiful part of the world, and you know, going out with some of these with a small kit. You can still make the MX sensor. Absolutely. Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? So the Red 1 sensor, the original MX sensor, the Mysterium sensor, they're still great fucking sensors. And as long as you're exposing them right, you're going to get beautiful images. And it's still raw. So I can go back to all of these images that I took, you know, on the Red 1, and I can go back to them and apply the new color science.
Yeah, IPP2. Yeah, exactly.
And have brand new images, really. And that's one thing that I do a lot. I always go back to my images, and you know, your place in your head changes after a while, and so you will go back to, or at least I go back to images, and I'll see them from a different perspective, and I'll be able to tweak them because I save all of these R3Ds, so I can go back and put a new color to them to suit wherever my head is at.
That was one of the things I loved about IPP2 was when I first got my Epic Dragon, I was a total noob to shooting it all with red. And I mean, I had some horrible shots, but when I got IPP2, I was able to fix them so much better. I was really impressed. And so, I mean, even in my reel, the very first shot that I ever took with the red, it's in my reel now because it worked.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done that before.
Yeah, I mean, that's the power of RAW. You know?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, so it's just progressed since there, and with this smaller system, it's a lot easier to get out into the wild. And so this is what I was waiting shot this.
Nice.
So this is a Ford GT, and this is actually the lead designer. This is his car.
Nice.
Yeah. And so that's taken with a red, and I'm in a car leaning out the window, and you can see, if you look closely, you can see the motion blur, and it almost looks like waves down here.
Right.
And it turned out really pretty, but I think I was at a 196 shutter with this, maybe.
How fast do you think you were going at that point?
Not very fast, maybe like 40, 50 miles an hour.
Just hanging out of a van?
I think I was actually in like it was one of our friends came out from Salt Lake City, and I think he was driving like a Toyota Corolla.
The other sports car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, so that, you know, and so this is kind of like, because the Red 1, you know, it's a big camera and it's sensitive and it's quirky, and you know, it doesn't do all that well in heat. And you have to really, I mean, it will, but you have to really, you know, you have to really be careful with you know, especially out here with the sun pounding down on it. And so by nature of that, you're bringing a lot of things with you. And so once we got the Epic, you know, the amount of shit that we had to bring in with us was really reduced quite a bit. And so once that happened, then I started going out into rural Nevada and photographing not only with the red, but I think this was actually, I shot this with a Canon. You know, and so I'd have my stills camera with me still, and then I'd have my red with me. And, yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things I've always noticed about you is that it doesn't matter if you're on a job or not, you are trying to capture the most beautiful frame you can. And so like Salt Flat, was that just you out there, or was that a production? What was that?
No, so we just went out there. So I have a friend of mine, Paul, who's a photographer, and And so we had gone out there, and Justin had joined us on this one, and we kind of just went out there and shot so every September, I think they've changed it because of the sensitivity of the area out there now, but every September you would have these big races out there where these guys were going to break records, and you'd have Volkswagen Bugs all the way up to these, $1,000,000 rocket cars, and what's crazy about this event is these guys aren't out there to win money. They're doing it mostly for bragging rights. And it's just a really tight community of people. I mean, I remember we were there, and there was the one guy who was having a real problem with one of his motorcycles. And I think he had to rebuild the gas tank or something like that, because at that speed and the heat, I think fuel wasn't getting where it needed to go or something. And so this team, this really successful team out of Bonneville who comes in from France every year, their entire team went over to this one guy and helped him fabricate a new gas tank for his motorcycle.
Wow.
I mean, that's just the kind of energy that got out there.
In the middle of a salt flat.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy, man, because you've got these drag strips that are miles and miles long, and lining up the entire drag strips are all these RVs, and so it's kind of like a pit, but the pit is like 5 miles long, and that was a pretty great experience out there.
But I took my Sprinter out there to do a high-speed run. Got 86. Only because I had extra large tires on it.
Yeah, I don't think we got rid of that. I had a Nissan Pathfinder at that point, and I think I ended up getting rid of it because I forgot to wash the bottom of it. Right.
Yeah.
So it just rusted.
Fortunately for me, it rained the day after I left there, and I was cruising down the freeway, just washing my van. It was great.
That's great. Yeah, it's a beautiful place out there, and so that camaraderie. I'm attracted to that, and I think in a large part because of my experience in the military. That's always something that I'm searching for. I grew up in a relatively poor family, and so my father did very well for himself, but before him, like my grandfather was a sheriff, and my grandmother was a grocery clerk, and so that's how I grew up, and so I know that world, and I'm attracted to that world, I guess.
Yeah.
And so the working class are always I'm intrigued by that world, and so so I spend a lot of time out in that world and try and give them. I try and give them a voice, and that's why I don't. There are photographers out there that, and I don't mean this to bash on that, but there are photographers out there that grew up. They passed through golden vagina, I like to say. That's actually not my phrase. I think that's an old phrase, but I like to say it. And so they really don't have a perspective outside of their little bubble. And I kind of, because my father did well, I grew up in a, differently than like he did. And so, but all of our extended family were working class. And so that's who I spent all my time with. And so, so I'm really attracted to, so I'm really drawn to that world, and my entire motivation and I think you can see that in the portraits that I take.
Right.
My entire motivation is to give the working class a voice, and almost a hero aspect to a lot of, not everyone is, it's like anywhere else. There are assholes out there, but
sure. I mean, they're the humans that have most predominantly the least sense of entitlement. They just are trying to survive, and they're doing what they do to survive.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with not making $300 a year. I mean, and there's guys out there that are multi-generational ranchers that have land that are worth millions and millions of dollars, but they're not going to sell it, and they're barely scraping by, as
they wouldn't change it
as cowboys, making a living. Yeah, they wouldn't. They've been doing it for 5 generations, and that's what they love doing. And so, who are we? I don't want to get political, but who are we from the metropolitan portion of the United States to look down on them because they're not making a
Right.
amount of money, they're not up to date on the newest technology? I mean, I don't think that's I don't think that's fair. And so that's where a lot of my motivation comes from, getting out there with these people that I know and where I'm from.
Chad, thank you for the super sticker there. That $4 will actually go to buy Ivan a beer the next time I see him. I promise.
Actually, you know what? If you're, I don't know what that was, but real quick. So there's a friend of ours in the reg community in production, and Cameron Michael, and he just had open heart surgery last night, and they closed him back up, and he's in North Carolina right now, in the ICU, recovering from open heart surgery. And it was a real scary situation. It'd be great if you shared that GoFundMe.
Yeah, I'm going to grab that link.
Yeah.
I know Vincent has posted it a bunch of times. Where is it?
Yeah.
Vincent's been very verbal lately. There we go. There it is. Copy.
Now I get why Montoya did this for 5 hours. I'm just looking at it.
Yeah, it flies by, and we'll definitely be whoops, that is not going to work. Okay, well, it's not going to be clickable, but I will post it afterwards in the comment section. But yeah, please, everyone, go out there and share what little you have, if you can, to help Cameron. Cameron is a fantastic dude, and he's got a lot of bills coming his way. So yeah, I mean,
he's a wonderful human being, and he got hit him out of the blue, and yeah, it's I don't know, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical expenses.
If you want, Ivan, I will donate that full amount to there, and anybody that does a super chat, I will donate all of those proceeds to Cameron. Honestly, though, your best bet is to go to the GoFundMe, because he'll get, I think, like 95% of that money, whereas with super chats, Google takes a cut right off the top. So there's more money to share if you do the GoFundMe, but any money that comes in through here, I will donate to Cameron.
That's awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, well, he's a cool dude. Very okay. Soren has posted the link that should be clickable in Facebook. So everybody, please go do that.
Yeah. So having this smaller system allowed me to get out and kind of, I mean, that's my typical view when I'm out.
It's a good view, though.
It's not bad. And so when I'm working, usually I'll take 2 weeks or 3 weeks a year, and I'll go out by myself into the rural West and film and photograph. And this is actually in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, in Teton National Park. And so yeah, I'll get out there and just see what I can find. I'm still learning my photographic kind of voice. And so as much of this as I can do to get out there and photograph and see things, the better. While I'm out there, now this is one of my favorite photographs. I shot this. This is a Canon. Yeah, this is just, again, I'm just at a rodeo, and it was interesting because I was keeping my eye on this group of kids, and this girl was trying to get the attention of subtly just kind of kept looking over at him, but the guy had the shadow of the cowboy hat. She kept trying, looking over there, and finally, I guess he looked at her, and she smiled a bit. And so this is what I love about what we do for a living, is being able to get out there and see these moments happening.
Well, and it's such a great capture because you have just the shadow of the person that she's talking to, and it's just, I love that.
That's fun. So, and then you get,
oh, that's cute.
That's from the same rodeo, and this is the Pendleton Roundup down in Oregon. And yeah, and so it's this is a really interesting and fun world, and you know, it's romanticized quite a bit. The West, you know, the West is romanticized quite a bit. But these are our really hardworking guys. These guys are actually all athletes. So these guys, the PBR guys, they're generally they're like pro football players or rugby players or whatever. This is pretty much all they do. Some of these guys work ranches, but a lot of them they just rodeo. That's their life existence, and they're a good group of people.
Let's zoom through some of these. I want to make sure you get to talk about your Nat Geos or your National Geographic Society and other stuff as well. But you know, I want to be. I know you have a limited time, so.
Well, as long as my wife doesn't text me, I'm good. She just text me if she needs me, because we got 3 feral children back home. And I'm at my studio right now, so I'm only about 10 minutes away from now. So I wanted to show this one because this is what I aspire to be. I came across this photograph years and years and years ago, and I'm like, yeah, that's me, and you know, when I'm 60, that's what I want to be. Just loaded up and fucking grumpy as hell and just out there having fun. And so, you know, getting out there, and I'm not quite there yet.
Well, you know, you gotta let the beard grow a little bit, maybe some gray in there. Well,
you know, I look like a dick, but it's all right. You know, I'm still learning this shit, and it's fun, man. But yeah, so this is one of the Microsoft jobs. We were actually out, and I was out in Kenya, and I was actually doing another job, and then you know, I called him up and I said, hey, can you send some money my way, and I'll stay an extra couple weeks and get some library footage for you guys. And so I ended up, you know, by myself with just my driver out in the wilds of Kenya, and just, you know, going out and kind of following wherever the wind would take us. And he was a really nice guy. And so we spent about a week and a half together, just kind of driving around.
Well, and there's a question that kind of goes with this. So do you feel a sense of crew separation anxiety the day after wrap on primary photography? So in your case, you're working with smaller groups, but you know, maybe longer. Do you get a sense of crew separation anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Absolutely. I mean, and for me, because we have a smaller team, you know, it's the same people. So I'm always in touch with these guys anyway. Where I get kind of that separation, what would you call it? I don't know if I call it anxiety, but more like a slight depression or sadness, I guess, because you are out, you know, at least the way that I do it, I'm pretty much kind of ingraining myself and trying to get in with people. And so leaving Madagascar, for example, because we followed these 2 hustlers, basically. There's a lot of criminal cartel activity that's happening there. And so we had spent some time with these middlemen, and they were 16 years old and married, and they had kids. And, you know, we were ingrained enough that we were waking up with them in the morning, you know, to film them getting up and starting their day. And so when you spend that amount of time with these people, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to leave. And
your really quirks miss their quirks.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what's great about Facebook. You know, I can keep in touch with all these guys, and hopefully I can get back there. But yeah, you know, you learn a lot while you're out there, and you take a lot, but you also give a lot, I hope. And so yeah, when you leave these environments, yeah, it can be tough. Sometimes you just want to get the fuck out of there, though.
Yeah, there's definitely times like that. Here's a more technical question, but when shooting stills on Red, what are the basic settings to get started? He's already YouTubed it, but we have a Jedi in the building.
So here's the thing about the Red and shooting stills. So the camera, I won't go into the backstory too much, but the camera itself was specifically designed to be a stills camera and a motion camera. And So you're either using it as a stills camera or you're using it as a motion camera. There are certain situations, however, depending on your shutter speed and the action that's happening within the frame, where you can get away with filming motion and extracting a still photograph. With a lot of my portraits, I'm shooting that at 48 frames per second with a 360 shutter, which is 1/96. And so because the camera's still, my subject is still, you don't get the characteristics of a 1/96 shutter. Typically, it depends on what's happening in the background, whatever. But if, like in this shot, for example, I was shooting at 48 frames at, I believe, a 360 shutter, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm 1/96, and we were coming in for a landing. It was pretty rough. But this is one of those just heartbeat moments where everything aligns. Me bouncing around, the camera bouncing around, the aircraft bouncing around, and just going through and finding that one moment where everything aligns,
stable, yeah,
and is stable. It's like a football when it hangs. There's one point where everything's still, and you'll be able to pull it. If I'm going on a production, and I was doing this a lot with National Geographic, where we would shoot everything at towards the end. So I shot 4 films for them for this one initiative, and everything we shot was at 48 frames, a 360 shutter, so that they would have the option of having real time. Actually, it was primarily 24 frames was the deliverable, but having the option, if it worked with the story, to have a little bit of slow motion built in it. So we shot everything at 48 frames, 360 shutter. And there were times though and so I knew I'd be able to pull stills and just by easily flipping over my shutter to 1/96 or 1/250th, and then coming back to a 360 shutter and continuing on. Now, when we were shooting wildlife, that's a different situation because there's a lot of movement. You don't know exactly what's going to be happening, so there's a lot of camera movement as well. And so you have to, go to a higher frame rate, which just by the nature of going to a higher frame rate, you're going to have a higher shutter speed. And so you can pull stills there, but there are often times when they're moving so quickly that you just have to kick up your shutter, open your iris if that's what you have available to you, and get those still moments.
And Chad, if you didn't see it yesterday, Red actually had part of their solidarity series on YouTube, a whole thing on shooting stills with the Red, and it's really good info, like what he was sharing there.
And I think that's, let me see if I can pull these up, how this works. So this is from, I think this is a mix of, I was shooting Leica and then also shooting Red. This is a National Geographic shoot. I think we're in Magicstone here in Mozambique. Yeah, so back to the, I love that vehicle so much. That's so great. But this was the environment that we were in. So this is pulled from the Red. This is my B cam helping me out there. And you see he's shooting a Sony FS7.
Right.
And the footage worked, it mixed together really well. But you can see this, so this is a still where I'm shooting 24 frames. If I remember right, I'm shooting 24 frames at a 180 shutter. And you can see that there is some motion blur, but it works in the context of this shot. It works because motion blur in a still photograph, it can give you a certain emotional response. And so, so there are times when I'm thinking about it. Now it's kind of subconscious, but I'll be thinking about, what's this going to look like as a still? And a lot of these situations, for me, having a little bit of motion blur in there gives it a little bit more of a emotional feeling, more intense feeling. And so, but then this is also a still moment here where I was shooting this at 24 frames at a 180 shutter. And what was great, and you're not seeing here, is the little puff of wind comes up and blows her. It just, her dress right here kind of moves just a little bit. And it's a nice little moment. Yeah. But I was able to get a really nice still out of it.
Oh yeah. That lens choice, what is that? Got
Yeah, so that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was a Canon. No, was it a Canon? Yes, it was a Canon .95 50 mm that I got from RVZ in Paris. He had sent it over to me to play with.
wow.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful line.
That makes that photograph so much more interesting too. That just how you yeah.
And I like, especially with motion too, man, because using, older lenses that have some character to them, wide open, if you almost have these brush strokes with your backgrounds, and that's something that I really, really like. And so so this is just, I think we were shooting on a 70-200 with the red here.
Yeah, hopefully not really close. Wow.
So that was fun. But yeah, so I can't show some of these, but
yeah, sure. Don't put yourself in trouble.
But what are these? I'll pull these up real quick. Yeah, so this is in Madagascar. So this is shot with a Leica here. This is actually up. We had gone up about 8 hours up this river to get to this village, and this is one of the guys we were following to get up to their farm. And so that's the director, Michael. You can see our cameras are here. Our reds we had 2 reds with us. And not a lot of kit with us. I mean, I think we had one 1650 with us that we were able to bring around.
I like that. Is the grain? This is like is this emulsion or is this digital?
This is digital. So it was extremely low light. I mean,
okay. Dark. I was like, how are you accomplishing this? This looks amazing.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of process that I did on this photograph in post, but not a lot. I mean, it was just the nature of the capture. And I have I can never get it right. Summilux, I think it was a 35-114. And so I'm wide open at 1.4. And we had just a little bit. It was taken at the same time that this one was taken. You can see how dark this is here. But it worked for what I wanted, and it captured. I think this is a really interesting shot. Is
that nighttime or is that?
Almost. I mean, the sun is set.
Twilight.
Yeah, you can see the glow here. Yeah. So and so even with the red, I really enjoy. I enjoy probably isn't the right word. I like noise in my frames. And if I'm not working for like a Microsoft or something like that, I like introducing noise into my images. I just
that character.
Yeah, and I shot film for years. I ended on Kodachrome 64 and had that last week that you could get them developed. And I had that last roll, and then I finally helped that. And then I went to digital at that point when you couldn't get that film, the color transparencies developed anymore. But I really.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I just love introducing noise, and so I'll underexpose a bit and then push it in post. And the Dragon sensor and the Monstro sensor, you can get a really, really pretty grain. You can certainly break it where it doesn't look good, but you just put it in post, and if it looks really shitty, you just take it black and white and it looks good.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely one of the things I love about Dragon is how beautiful the grain is. It's supposed to be a flaw, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Phil asks if you can chat about your lens choices between Super 35 and VistaVision. He said he remembers you like a few special focal lengths.
Yeah, so Super 35 got an old set of Mark 1 B speeds, Zeiss B speeds, and those are fast. Those are T1.2, and And I really love those. And my go-to focal length is about 25 millimeter. But the 25 millimeter on a Super 35, I think if I remember right, the crop is like 1.6, something like that. So in effect, you're shooting like 40 millimeter, but it still has the characteristics of a 25 millimeter. And I really love the look of that lens, that 25 millimeter super speed that I've got. There's no other lens like it. I think one of the elements might have been shifted in there. So it has a very particular look. There's shit growing inside of it. And it just, so it has this bloom and low light with specular highlights that are really, really pretty. And I really love that lens. Of course, it won't cover VistaVision. And so I was really heartbroken, really, when that sensor came out, because I was like, I can't use these lenses anymore. But I can always shoot 6K, and that's a great thing. I can always shoot 6K if I need to, or 5K, and get what I need to get. But I'm still searching for lenses that will really, not to sound like a total asshole, but that speak to me and the language that I have with photography. And I have a set of Solaras that the guys that they're no longer in existence, but Hans Inotech gave me a full set of their prime lenses, and those are pretty close. You know, they're not perfect and they're not pristine. They're not master primes, but they do cover VistaVision and they do have a really nice look to them. And that's really what it comes down to is I'm more concerned about the lenses than I am the sensor that I'm using.
Sure.
And so we'll choose a sensor to use based off of what lenses that we're using. So the Supremes, though, man, I gotta say those Supremes are really fucking nice. I had we shot the Zeiss Supremes. We shot those in Madagascar, and this is actually, let me see, this is Madagascar. Let me see if I've got. Yeah, so that's a still on Monstro with the Zeiss Supremes, and they're small enough that I can still go handheld, because I shoot pretty much everything handheld. I rarely will be on sticks unless we're doing an interview or something like that. Rarely am I on sticks. I don't like the way that looks. I don't like pans and tilts or any of that shit. I just don't. I don't like it unless it's needed. I would rather just go handheld. And so they're fast. I think they're 1.5, and they just have a beautiful look. And this is all available light. So we shot this. We're with these. So that guy who was bailing water out of the boat in that earlier photograph, that's him right there. And so we rolled into this bar, and he's the only one that we know. And it was a party that was happening in there. And we came in, and we had a small enough, you know, my camera's built very small. If you've ever seen it, it's set up very small. And so I was able to get in there and photograph this film motion, and I extracted some stills. So this still right here, 35 megapixel, I could blow this up into a fine art print if I wanted to, and I could, where the viewing distance can be very close because it's tack sharp. And so this is, like I said, this is all fluorescent lighting, and fluorescent lighting in African skin tone is magical. The way that African skin tone reflects a fluorescent light source is just gorgeous. Whereas with a Caucasian skin tone, it just looks like absolute ass. But here it looks great. And so when we actually did this, we didn't bring any lighting with us. I'm jumping around a little bit, but
yeah, that's fine.
We didn't bring any lighting with us. And during our conversation, I'm like, well, we'll just buy some compact fluorescent bulbs while we're there, and we'll get some long cords with the light socket on the end of it. And if we need to light anything, we'll just use that. And I don't think we actually had to do that at all, actually. And there might be one situation where we had to augment the light, and we just use a CFL bulb. But yeah, this is the Zeiss Supreme. I think I put a light curve on this, and that's it. So this is pretty much out of camera. Look at that. I mean, fluorescent and skin tone, and that skin tone is just gorgeous. And it was great too because we're in such a tight environment. we're really ingraining ourselves, and we're drinking. I mean, we're drinking a lot, and so we're partying with these guys, and smoking and fucking drinking, and we spent hours here, and live music is going on, and I'm roaming around and just getting all of these different.
Getting real people doing real things. That's awesome.
Yeah, and this woman up here, as I'm talking with her, she was so drunk. It was so funny. But these two girls up here are twerking, and I think I'm at 48 frames and a 360 shutter. So this may be 180 because there was that action that was going on back there. So, but but it was fun. And so, but this is the Zeiss Supreme, and I love that lens. And I hope to, but in saying that, I hope that I'll find other lenses.
Right. Bob Gundu asks what you're hoping for photography in the new DSMC3.
Bob, hi Bob. Bob is so fucking handsome.
His hair is so. I'm jealous of his hair.
He's just such a good-looking dude, man. Good for you, Bob. And he takes amazing photography, by the way. If you haven't checked out his work, he does a lot of amazing architectural photography that's really, really gorgeous. I love the way that he captures spaces. It's beautiful. 645 sensor, man. That's what I want. That's my only hope, is that we get a 645 sensor, and if we can do that, then that will be everything we need. I can get rid of my medium format stills cameras and just use that. I don't know if we'll be able to get to 100 megapixel. It'd be great if we could.
That would be pretty astonishing.
I don't know if that's doable, but I mean, Fuji did it, but that's a stills, obviously. My main thing with the DSMC3 is maybe a little bit smaller of a body, so somewhere between Komodo and DSMC2, and a 645 sensor. And I don't know if that's actually technically possible, but that would. You
never know. Come on, Jared, hook us up here. But 100 megapixels with red code would actually be quite manageable.
Yeah, I think it would be. And there was this great talk. I went to. It's a festival for cinematographers. It's called Camera Image in Poland, and I was there 2 years ago, I think it was. And Michael Cione did a great talk on resolution, and resolution that matches what the human eye, what our resolution is with our human eye. And if I remember right, he was really talking about the 100 megapixel. If we can get 100 megapixel with motion, that'll be pretty close to what we see with our human eye, which would be great. And for me, it'd be great for color, but also for stills, the potential of having stills.
So does that, in your mind, does that mean basically 16K video is where we should end up without having to exceed in the future, or what?
I don't know. There's guys out there that are much smarter than I am that can talk to that. I think just having a true 645 sensor, whatever the megapixels are, I don't know what that would math out to, but yeah, I mean, you hear that conversation about too much resolution. I mean, really, it's color. It's more about the higher the resolution, the more color you're going to capture, and the more color you have, the more vibrant of an image that you can have, and a deeper image, I guess, is the best way to say it. So. But yeah, ask someone smarter than I what the optimal resolution is. Is it 16K?
Well, I mean,
is it 12K? I don't know.
It may be something that a smarter person can answer, but you have an eye for what you want to see as well. So I mean, technically wise, maybe not, but for your eye, do you need anything more than that? You're saying 645 sensor size and around 100 megapixels.
645, it's less about resolution, and it's with the 645 sensor, it's more about the look of the image, because you do have that, you are starting to touch that look with a VistaVision sensor. It's not quite medium format. It's a little bit better than full frame, but it has this subconsciousness to it that's really interesting to me. And so for the 645, I love the look of medium format. I just love that look. Right. And I've got an old Mamiya 6MF, rangefinder medium format camera that I absolutely love. I've got a Pentec 6.7 that I love. And so I would be very happy if I could use this system that I know very well, that I can do multiple things with, and have a 645 sensor, but then also have the option to shoot 6K if I needed to on that same sensor. I've shot portraits on my VistaVision, and I've shot portraits on my 6K Dragon Super 35, and I love them just as I love both of the images, primarily because of the lens I'm using. I don't pixel peep. I don't get in there and say, I don't do that. It's more of just how a photograph or a piece of motion makes me feel, than pixel peeping. I'll leave that to the guys that are smarter than me.
Let's jump through some of your more your stills here and see what kind of conversation we drum up from.
Yeah, so these were taken inside of a prison in Madagascar. And so no one in these images that I'm going to show is over the age of 17 years old. And This actually, I shot this with my iPhone. But we were doing an interview with a 16-year-old kid. And I can't go into specifics yet, but there's a lot of criminal activity that's happening there for a very specific reason.
Sure.
And so a lot of these kids, there's potential easy money to be made, and a lot of them, if they're not. So while we were there, actually, there was a 14-year-old kid who got caught trying to steal some things, and in this world, and he was hacked to death by the entire village with machetes. And so in a way, he was kind of the lucky one, because these kids were actually caught. And so like I said, no one in this image is over the age of 17 years old. And more than likely, these kids are the majority of these kids will probably die in prison. Some of these kids are in this environment for 3 years before they even go to trial. Extremely poor. They don't have resources to bribe or get through the judicial system there. And so this is them lining up for lunch.
Wow.
And then this, did I not have it in there? Oh, darn it. Oh, you know what? I think I might have it in there. I think I might have this image that actually shows where they live. And I shot that with the red. Let me see if I've got it here, because that's...
Here, I'll remove it from the stream so you can find it, and then I'll pop it back in when you got it.
Yeah, I'm not got it.
So, anybody watching, if you have questions for Ivan or any of the projects that he's worked on, or just how he likes to shoot, pop them down there below. We'll try to get to all of them. And remember, there's a link in the Facebook, and there will be one on the YouTube for Cameron Michael if you want to go help him out. That's awesome. Let's see.
I might not have it here.
Frosty
Anyways,
says,
what's that?
I said, Frosty says he used to shoot film 645 and loved it. I'd love to see that format for sending anyone with a clue on Red's future.
From a business standpoint, or
no? I think he means that is 645 coming to Red's future. Anybody with a clue could not tell you.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that was one, early on back in, I think, 09 or 08, they put out, kind of this list of sensors that they would eventually release. One was a 617 sensor, 645 sensor was in that little one sheet that they put out. And then it went silent. So who knows? It would be a nice to have, but it all depends on the market. I mean, they have these great monochrome cameras that they create, and there's not a high dollar, or they don't sell a lot of them. So maybe
it's a full business decision.
Yeah. So it could be that Yeah, I thought I added this in there. Darn, yeah, I really love that image. See if
I mean, they've got to look at it from how many do they actually expect to sell, how much can they make, or how much will people be willing to pay, and then all that goes back into the R&D for it. And can they make a return on investment? Because in the end, they're a business as well.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
I don't think I have this image up. Darn, sorry.
That's all right. Or you want me to just add it back to the stream, or you?
Yeah, you can go back.
Okay. Let's see here. Travis asks, how much direction and conversation are you having with people as you make these images?
So for the portraits, here, I'll put this on. There's conversation for sure prior to asking them if I can make a portrait of them. And that's more in just depending on the situation where we're following them around, and just making simple conversation, and they can get a sense of me and where I'm coming from, and people pick up on that pretty easily. I mean, I think that's the hard part with portraits photography in general. The technical part is pretty easy. It's more of the human connection that you make with somebody, and if you are naturally shy and you hesitate, or if you're not confident in what you are trying to do, people will sense that, and they may let you take their photograph, but you're not really going to get a good portrait because there is this wall that is still up. And so my goal when I'm out there is to try and make people feel as comfortable as possible. And I'm not actually trying is probably the wrong word, because when I go and I'm doing this work, I am genuinely interested in these places that I'm going, and I'm genuinely interested in the people. And because of my background, I try not to judge people on their station in life or their circumstance. And I think that's really important. And if you can come to somebody, whether it's this girl here or my buddy Kelly, you've probably seen this. I think Brett has this all over the place. But
love that one.
If you're coming to these guys with a genuine curiosity, then the wall will come down, and you'll be able to make these. They'll allow you to make these portraits.
And you're really right up in his face with that photo, aren't you? That's a.
Yeah, so I'm on that 25 millimeter B speed, so I'm probably maybe 3 feet away from them, maybe. And and so I have that initial conversation, and I get to know them. And sometimes, like I'll show you this next one, I only had like 30 seconds to create some sort of connection with this person. But with Kelly, I had pretty much spent the entire morning with him, and then I took this photograph. And did I give him direction? No, I just said, hey, look in the lens, and I said, don't find your reflection in the lens and just stare at yourself. And that's pretty much the extent of the direction, because I don't want them to perform for the camera. I just want them to be for the camera. And
right.
And this is Kelly. I mean, anyone who knows Kelly and they see this portrait of Kelly, they will know that that's who Kelly is right there. He's a very stoic, but you can see in his eyes he's a very gentle human being and a very kind and generous human being. But he also, if you step left when you should be stepping right with him, he'll pop you in the jaw about it. So there's
take the seriousness of it.
And that's the interesting about portraits, because and that's what you try and do, is you try and capture that person and who they are, and you hope that it translates to somebody who's never met this person before. And I would hope that someone would look at this and and take in his environment, and then look at his eyes and his posture and see that this guy, you know, and hopefully read him for who he is. And so there's no context to this photograph other than just, you know what I mean?
I like the direction that you actually gave, which to me is probably the least amount of direction you can give someone where they're not going to act. And that was to find the reflection in the lens. That's brilliant. I've never actually considered that, because if you tell somebody to do something, most people can't act. And so they think they're acting, they're actually portraying something completely that's not them.
Right. And so with these guys, you know, especially in the Western world, you know, all have fun with it because they're all pretty, you know, it's a fun group of guys. And so like with Kelly, I actually shot this wide first, and I moved in closer, and I was like, don't worry, I'm not going to try and kiss you or anything. And he's like, and that kind of caught him off guard. He's like, he better fucking die, man. What the fuck? and so, you know, he knew I was joking,
right.
And so you're able to have those, you know, just to make them feel comfortable. And the thing with shooting portraits with the Red, they don't know I'm recording because there's no shutter release.
Right.
And that's why I said earlier when we started this hands down, I'm of the opinion, hands down, this is the single best portrait camera that is out there now, because you can set up a situation where you're getting a portrait. It could be the Queen of England, or it could be this, you know, this kid in Nepal. You know, you put them in the environment that they're in, kind of, you know, direct them to get into a certain position so you can get the light correct. Like with this kid, you know, we just had this small little window that was off to his right. And so I had him kind of step away from the wall just a touch, or her, and then just kind of look in the camera. But I was recording the entire time that I was asking her to kind of get in position. And so you're going to get a still image, you know.
You capture it before they're ready, which is actually them being them. Yeah.
That's right. And it's like if I had a 5D with me, or if I had a DSLR, or my, you know, phase 1 or something like that, and I brought that up to get they know what that is. And so you take, you know, and so the wall goes up. And so like this girl, for example, I had maybe 30 seconds to get this portrait.
Yeah, I love that one too.
And we were literally on a scout. We were driving to a location to scout a home. And I saw this drover family pushing, this is down in Australia, I saw this drover family pushing these cattle, and I just see this little hat going through the cattle. And I told our driver, hey, stop. And I just happened to have, it's serendipity, because I just happened to have the camera on. And I jumped out, because I think I was configuring some settings or something. And I just jumped out and walked into the cattle, and I looked at, you know, kind of waved to her, and I, you know, I just asked her if I could take a portrait or take a photograph of her. I think is what I said. And this girl is 8 years old. And she said yes. And she didn't say yes, like, yes, you can. And she just looked at me, and she's like Clint Eastwood. She just nodded at me. Yeah, no problem. She's on horseback. And then out of nowhere, this is about noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, out of nowhere, because I'm focused on her, she got all of this fill light. She was under harsh shadow because of the direction. And what it was, and I hear this voice behind me saying, why are you taking a picture? And it was her mom in her white Land Cruiser. And the white Land Cruiser gave me all of this fill.
Wow.
And I'm just rolling the entire time as I'm talking to her, and I told her, you know, what I'm doing. And then I was like, I got it. And then she ended up giving me her phone number, and I got her a print of this. And this is interesting, and this is where I actually went back 4 years later and photographed her again. And I planned, this is going to be, I think this will be a long-term project for me, where I'm going to go back, if I can, every 4 or 5 years and photograph. Nice. Her name is Ocean. Because I didn't find out, I didn't even know her name, because I got this photograph, and then, you know, like I said, it was maybe a minute and a half, and then we're back in the car and driving to our location to go scout. And I had come back for, I can't remember why I was there again, but I had come back and then I gave myself an extra week and a half and I drove back out there to try and find her. And I remember the kind of the rough location where we were at. I went into a grocery or a little gas station and I held up my phone. I was like, hey, do you know this person? And the guy, oh yeah, that's Ocean. Her family lives just like 2 houses down. So I went there and I met up with her grandmother. And so this is 4 years later.
Huh.
What's interesting, if you notice, she's still around the same size. She hasn't aged at all.
Yeah, she looks almost younger even.
Yeah, well, this is the reason. And so I met with her. So her grandfather is a full Aboriginal, and her grandmother was, I think, Norwegian. And so she has, if you look at it, she has the characteristics, the bone structure of an Aboriginal. I don't know if I'm saying that, but it's Aboriginal. Yeah, it's definitely Aboriginal, but I think there's a specific term for this area. And I'm forgetting right now. But so I went back 4 years later. Well, she was still at school, and so I had a chance to sit down with the grandmother, and came to find out she was actually a heroin baby. So her mother was addicted to heroin while she was in utero, in the womb. And her mom actually left the farm and went to Sydney when she was 15 and left Ocean and her brother with the grandparents. And they're living in abject poverty. I mean, it's, and so malnutrition, I think just the fact that she was a heroin baby when she was in the womb, it really stunted her growth. And so I followed her, I kind of asked her to give me a tour of her little farm there. And then this is her standing next to her grandmother, so you can see how tiny she is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so I think I'll go back and I'll photograph her, and I'm hoping she has a long, happy life, but I'm not sure that'll happen. So, yeah, while we were out there, you have these. This is a friend of mine, and she was my assistant on this little job that we did. And early in the morning, this is the first time she'd ever been to Australia, and the first time she had experienced this kind of landscape. And I just quickly caught a moment of her early in the morning, looking out on the area we were at. Yeah. So these are the moments that I really love. These little moments are really great. Anyway, what was the question?
Yeah. Bob asked, does global shutter help in your style of shooting, or would it help?
I think it would. I guess the question would be, would I change the way that I shoot if I had the global shutter? I don't know. That's a good question. I guess I won't know until I try it, Bob.
There you go.
Yeah.
This
is a behind the scenes shot here. I don't have too many, but I just happen to have one here. So
wow. Okay.
And these guys.
Are they running by you full bore?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
But these are horsemen, and I trust them, and so they have my full trust. And so yeah, they're coming full bore, right?
How did the still come out from that one?
It's good. Yeah, I don't think I have it here actually, but yeah, it turned out good. I was actually shooting for motion for this, so this was more. I had my settings for motion and not stills. My main objective here was a motion piece.
Travis said he missed what camera you used for these. Most were Red, but some Leica. Is that right?
Yeah, so I use the Red Monstro and the Red Gemini are my two go-tos. If I can, there are situations, of course, where they're just too big. And so I'll use a Leica rangefinder. I have an M9, which is digital, and then I also have an M6, which is analog. And then I also have a Mamiya 6MF, which is a rangefinder medium format camera, and I'll use that when I can. But generally, and I also have a Canon 5D Mark IV, which I love that. In fact, I bought the 5D Mark IV because I was missing some shots that I really wanted to get, and I'll highlight those here. So these were shot actually with, so I have a Fuji GFX 50S, which is the medium format Fuji, 50 megapixel. And the frames per second on that are pretty slow. And so shooting action sequences or shooting any kind of action is really difficult with that camera. It can be done, but it's very difficult. You better be on point in order to get the shot you want to get. But I had this experience. I was out in the Big Island of Hawaii, and I was photographing this Parker Ranch. Well, you can see it there, Parker Ranch Labor Day Rodeo. And after this experience of shooting this rodeo, I went and bought a 5D Mark IV. I thought about it getting a 1DX, but it's just too big.
Right.
And so I got the 5D Mark IV for the frames per second so that I could get shots. But I wasn't able to get the shots that I wanted to get. So this is with the Fuji. I was able to get this, that's fine. But what I really wanted to get was them blasting out of the chute when they were doing, they were roping the steers, yeah.
Right.
And so I wasn't able to get it. So finally I just said, fuck it. I'm gonna slow my shutter down, and I'm just gonna do some creative artistic stuff with this. And it actually turned out great, thankfully, but it's not what I wanted from this. But because it was a personal project, I wasn't beholden to a client. Otherwise I probably would have been fired. But if this would have been a paid job, I would have rented the proper equipment and not gone with this. But I was able to capture some moments. I got lucky on that one, and I was able to freeze it. But this, once I was missing the shots, I was like, you know what? This is what I saw in my head, and I adjusted my shutter so that I could start getting these shots. And I'm really happy that I failed in my initial thought on what I was trying to capture, and that forced me to do something different and get creative. And so you can see just this little hoof right here is in focus, and everything else is blurry. And I really love the way that these turned out, and I'm really happy with these photographs. And I think they really capture kind of, a day at the rodeo and how hectic it is for these guys that are on horseback. And so these came out, I think, really nicely. I was able to get some shots. Like, I really love this shot.
That's great.
Yeah. So.
As a segue, what's the highest elevation you've ever worked?
The highest elevation I've ever worked was in the Andes at 15,000 feet. And that was actually pretty interesting because, and I didn't pull up photos of that, but it's like Mars. It's near Alma, which is San Pedro de Atacama. And Dustin Kukuk, I don't know if he's still on here, I saw him earlier. But
oh yeah.
He's done a lot there. And I had actually, there he is, yeah, he's here. I had actually just come off that job I had shot for Ocean X and Blue Planet 2, and we were off the coast of Chile. And it was interesting because I was doing some submarine work there, and we were at 800 meters below the surface of the ocean, underwater. And then that was like a 3-week job. And then I got off the ship, and I flew up to San Pedro, and I rented a truck. And then, just less than a week later, I'm at 15,000 feet above sea level. And so it was interesting, just that, because at 800 meters, there's so much life. And even going down through the water column, there's so much life that you're seeing while you're descending to that depth. And it's an extreme environment. I mean, the pressures are enormous. It's an extremely dangerous endeavor to put these submarines in that environment.
So is that the lowest elevation you've been? Is 800 meters below sea level?
No, the lowest elevation I've been is 1,100 meters. Wow. And that was off the coast of Maine. But going from that to then a week later being at 15,000 feet and seeing zero life was really interesting. Where the environment, you have oxygen, there's no pressure, but the environment, it's a really harsh environment up there. In fact, the only thing that I did see from natural hot springs that occur up at that elevation, because it's really, there's a lot of volcanic activity there. You have these pools, these hot springs that are coming up. And so you have flamingos, pink, you have flamingos at that altitude. And you also have llama. And the flamingos are, flamingos are naturally white, but they're pink because of the bacteria that they eat. And so, if I got that right, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what a scientist told me. And so you have
that they're in. Yeah.
That's right. And so you had this, this environment at 15,000 feet that was barren, like Mars, but then you'd have these little pockets of life, of flamingo and, an Andes gull and llama, but generally it was barren. And
so
that was a little interesting up there at that elevation. Yeah.
That's lava right there?
This is lava. So this is down in so I was on an expedition down in Nicaragua filming this volcano, and the scale on this is, it doesn't look that big, does it? I mean, the scale is a little difficult here, right? But this little rock right here is about the size of a small house.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's deep. So we were there. It was an expedition to place monitoring equipment to open source volcanic study. And so if you're a scientist anywhere in the world, you are able to log in through this through this website or whatever, and you can get all of the volcanic data and study the volcanic activity. And so we were here for, I made some portraits. This is a good one.
What focal length were you at to capture that lava there? Because I always find it a challenge to photograph large things and make them show the size.
Yeah, I mean, for this, you had to have the contact, and I shifted the photograph later where because there's no humans in this and there's no equipment or anything, so you can't really, but this one, I shot this. I think I shot with my Leica, if I'm not mistaken. So I would have been on a 35 for this.
Okay.
But then you go to, so this is the top of so you have the 0 level where the lava was, and this is level 3 or level 2. So level 2 to level 1, level 1 to level 2. Right? And so this was the zip line that they had set up so that everyone could get down. But here you kind of have a little bit of scale. And even then, it really doesn't give you the scale. Here is your scale. So you can see this guy here, but then if you look really closely, you can see a tiny little human being right there. You probably won't be able to see it here, but
oh, wow.
There's a tiny little human being right there. And so it's it's difficult to get scale, but to get scale, it's just introducing a piece of known equipment or whatever, or a human, whatever you need to add there. So this is Scott Perzinski. He's a NASA astronaut, or astronaut for NASA. He was on 7 space shuttle missions, and I think he has a handful of spacewalks. So he was part of this expedition. A really nice guy, very focused. But his goal was to be a volcanaut and an astronaut. He wanted to be, and I'm sure he would want to get in a submarine too. And
yeah, I was going to say that would be the collect them all.
Yeah. So we had an interesting. There's a deeper story behind this mission, how it actually turned out, and that's a story for another day. But
sure.
So this is my buddy Matt. He's with Camp 4 Collective, and he was there filming as well. And this kind of gives you a little bit more scale to this environment. He's about ready to go down. What's funny is all of these, guys were in, the volcanic suits and the really protective Gore-Tex and the high-tech gear. and he's there in a t-shirt and jorts and a pair of New Balance tennis shoes. I mean, this guy just summited Mount Everest recently, and he's a true mountaineer and a true professional, and one of the funniest guys I've ever met. And he's very careful, but he also, because of experience, he knows what he can do and he can't do. So to see him in jorts, I was like, ah, we're good. Yeah. Yeah, and so that's a wide shot. So you can see this is our base area right here. And this is actually a time lapse. I don't have the time lapse today, but and then you can see the city in the background. So my task was to film this portion of the expedition, but then also to go around the base and go to all of the villages and film the communities that are affected by this volcano. And often, this recent memory, there was a village that was wiped out when this thing exploded. And
so you talked about being in a submersible. Tell me how that started. How did that come to be? And
let me pull that up real quick. I think I got it. Hopefully I got it here. Okay. So this is interesting because this is not something that I envisioned myself doing ever in my entire life. However, I remember when I was a little kid, and some of the guys, I might be dating myself, but I remember when I was a little kid, there was a National Geographic magazine, an issue that came out that had Alvin. You remember Alvin?
I do remember Alvin. Yeah.
And I remember that. And I remember that as a little kid thinking, man, how cool would it be to go into a fucking submarine? How cool would it be to go and do what those guys were doing? But then that was a fleeting moment, and I never thought about it again until I was asked to be a part of this expedition. And so how that came to be is the guy, so it's the Dalio family. And I've become good friends with Mark Dalio, who's the head of OceanX. And he called me up, and he had seen my work, and he said he was a fan of my work and really would love to work with me someday. And I was like, great. He said, well, we got an expedition that's coming up, I'll be in touch. And I didn't hear from him for like 4 or 5 months. And so, nice conversation. Hopefully that'll happen someday. Well, then I get a phone call from the producer and said, hey, are you available in 2 weeks for I think it was like 21 days, 30 days. I think it was 21 days. And I said yes. And so what he had done is actually he added me to the roster. So they have like 3 or 4 DPs that they work with. And so he had added me to that roster. And anyway, so I got the call. I got packed up, and my role for this expedition was to film OceanX as a media and scientific platform, working with the film crew and the scientists that were doing the second episode called The Deep for Blue Planet 2. And so my job was to film that interaction. And so that's what I was doing. And then as an unfortunate event led to an opportunity for me where the lead scientist, there was a hurricane that had hit down in Florida. And so she had to leave and go take care of her, I think, her family and her house and stuff like that. And so a seat had opened up in one of their submersibles. And so Mark came to me and said, hey, you want to go down and film? Because so they have 2 subs. They have this one, which is a 3-seater. And so you can see me, that's me there, and then a scientist, and then you can see this little arm right there, and that's where the pilot sits. But here you have 2 cameras. Here's the back of one, lower right, and then you have this one. And these are benthic housings. They're made by Gates. And in each of these cameras is a red with, one is a wide-angle zoom and the other one is a macro zoom. And then you can see the lighting setups that we have. So that we build off this grid and then add our lights as we need them. depending on what we're going to do. And then this is the scientific material here. So the other sub, the first sub that I went down was only a 2-seater, and it was more of a scientific sub. So it was a sub pilot and a scientist. And because the scientist wasn't there, I got that seat. And so we ended up going down. I think you have a photograph that I had sent you of that. And so I was handheld with my Red going down. And so at this point, I'm filming for Blue Planet 2, which it didn't really register at that point until after. And the reason after is because I actually was able to get footage of animal behavior that had never been seen before. Purely luck. And so we got the footage. Thankfully, I hit record. Yeah, there it is. So we're at about 800 meters there. And so we're sitting there, and I think we had actually moved position after that photograph was taken. But we had moved position, and we were just sitting and waiting. And that's when, if anyone's seen Blue Planet 2, the second episode called The Deep, where the two squid come together, and it's under blue light. Obviously, we're shooting under red light, but in post, they had shifted the color to blue for whatever reason. I think the red was much more powerful.
To make it Blue Planet.
Yeah. Well, we were under red light because it didn't affect the cones of the squid. So white light, they would repel. Red light, it really didn't bother. And so anyway, so we had a squid that was inking in front of us, and we noticed that it had another squid that it was eating. And then it started swimming away from us, and then out of the darkness, and you can see the fall off in that shot. The red light doesn't travel very far, maybe 20, 30 feet. And so this thing started swimming away from us, and I'm recording. And then out of the left flank, this other squid comes in, just shoot. And I'm shooting at 72 frames per second. And so it happens very fast. But this squid just comes in out of the flank and attacks this other squid. They start fighting. It rips the dead squid away from the other squid, and then it takes off into the darkness. And that was it. And it was maybe 20 seconds of activity, but I had it on pre-record. I was able to capture the entire motion of this thing, like right here, because the sphere is only 7 inches thick. So this squid is here inking, doing its business. And so we got that, and then we got up top, and everyone was really happy with that shot. And so I got another chance to go on that mission. I got another dive. And then I've had other expeditions that I've done with them, and was able to get down to 1,100 meters. So this is what it looks like when they're launching that sub. This is my buddy Lou Lamar that's actually in the orange cap there, and I'm photographing. So we were taking turns. So this particular project was at OceanX and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and also National Geographic. And so my first published images in National Geographic came from this mission, and it was digital, not in a magazine. I'm still striving towards that, but we had some images from this that were pulled from the Red, and so we were leapfrogging submissions. So he would do one, and then I would do the next one. And so I was shooting motion for him, and then also motion for us. He was there specifically on assignment for National Geographic. And then I was also shooting for him and stills for him for his article within National Geographic. But he still was gracious enough to give me credit for the images that they used, which was really, really great of him.
Talk about the considerations that you have to, you were telling me earlier about being able to shoot through this giant piece of glass or plexiglass, whatever it is. What are the considerations for shooting through that? And
yeah, so let me go back to this one here. So this kind of gives you a good idea. So if you think about it, you are surrounded by 7 to 8 inches of acrylic. And there's another name for it, but I'll call it acrylic. And so in essence, you have two spheres. You've got the inner sphere and the outer sphere. And so you have two planes that you're working with. And so if you're on a tight lens, like an 85, you're gonna compress those two planes of existence, and it'll give you a slight double image, and it just makes it soft and a little bit blurry. And that's just looking straight through. If you go off axis just a little bit, it amplifies that effect. And so I had 24 hours notice before I was actually going to go down. So I jumped in and did a few lens tests, and they had, I think if I remember right, it was a 14 to 24 zoom that I ended up using. And at that focal length, it didn't compress those two planes of existence. And so that gave me kind of freedom of movement within the dome. And if anyone's ever done underwater, you really have to have that pointing straight, and the sensor in relationship to the arc of the dome, you really have to be in perfect alignment. And so with this, I was able just to have a little bit of slight movement because I was able to move the camera forward and back because I'm handheld. And so we ended up shooting mostly wide angle so that I didn't have that optical effect of the two planes mixing.
Talk about the experience of going down, even the first time, or even this time. What is it like to be in there and to make that descent?
It is amazing. It's let me see if I have a shot from that. I might not actually. How do I go to from there? No, I don't. It's so the first time I went down, it's interesting because you're overwhelmed just by the simple fact that you're going to be going into this machine. And as the sub-pilot described it to me, he said, that the environments that they're going in are harsher than space because of just the pressure. And if you have, like, for example, if they had like a little soda can here, for example, and it somehow imploded, it's kind of the way depth charge works. So depth charge doesn't actually, it's not an explosion that takes out a submarine. It's actually the implosion of that can that creates this shockwave effect that then will, blow that thing apart. I'm not getting the language correct. Forgive me, but and so you have that in the back of your mind that if there's a little volume somewhere and it decides to go, that chances are you're not going to survive that incident. So you have that in the back of your head. But honestly, I wasn't even thinking about that when they first asked me to go. I was so excited to go. My biggest worry at that point was going to the bathroom because you're under there for 8 hours and there's no bathroom.
I was going to ask, what do you do?
Yeah. And so these are the initial thoughts that you have, or at least that I had. It's like, oh shit, okay, because I've shit my pants before on when I was in Nepal, and it's not a pleasant experience, and it's not pleasant for people around you. I was really sick then and got some stomach bug. And for this, I really did not want to do that because you're not coming back up. You're going to live there. And as it was told to me, there's only 5 people in the history of submersible work that have shit their pants in the submarine, and every single person knows their name. So I did not want to be on it.
You did not want to be number 6.
No,
that's awesome.
So, so that's what I was initially thinking about, and then I was like, okay. He said, well, you have diapers, and if you really have to go, but so I didn't eat a lot of fiber, and I just I fasted just a little bit before I went, and didn't drink a lot of water. But then you get past, then you're lifted off the A-frame and you're dropped into the water, and you would think it would be super claustrophobic, and for me, it really wasn't, because you do have this clear acrylic sphere all around you. You can look, you have 270 degrees of visibility around you, and so it was just an awe-inspiring to get there and to understand that you're to what you're about to do. And what made it really easy is the professionalism of everybody that's there, because you have a sub team. Their whole mission is to make sure that you come back. And so that the equipment is tight. That the safety systems are in place. That they're taking care of you. And so that kind of goes out of your mind. Honestly, if something were to happen at that depth, you wouldn't feel it anyway. And so you just kind of, at that point, you're super busy and you're focusing in on work. And so 7-8 hours goes by like it's like an hour. It feels like you're hardly down there. You're really sad when you come back. So
how, like, I'm just looking at so you're saying that the Lexan or the Lucite or whatever the acrylic is 7 to 8 inches thick. How does the gates housing, how does it get to be so small?
Yeah. So how does it get to be, what do you mean? How does it get to be so small?
Well, I mean, it couldn't possibly have 8 inches of acrylic in front of it, does it?
No, well, they're specially designed housings that Gates designed for deep water filmmaking. And so I don't know what the thickness of their dome is, but there's no air in there, so there's no possibility of, so there's an equalization of the pressure that's in there. So, and same thing, I'm sorry, I said that backwards. So there is equalization with the pressure, same as with the sphere. So we're in one atmosphere, and so you have equal pressure. I don't know if I'm not a scientist, so I'm not really sure if I'm saying that correctly. But
how big is that camera housing? Is it?
It's not much larger than a standard Gates housing,
okay.
So it's probably this long.
That's interesting.
And it's long enough that you can get, you can get probably get a longer lens on there if you want to zoom.
Wow.
I don't know the actual dimensions, sorry, but
that's all right.
But the limitations you have, though, is you can't change the card.
Right.
And you're using a 1 terabyte card, and if you were to run continuously, you'd have about an hour, depending on your compression ratio. And so, so that's actually where the Komodo could come and play with this, because the Komodo CFast, you could hardwire to a data management device within the submarine. And so you'll see there's two laptops there. And so this is with Mikkel with full control. So Mikkel, you have full control for each camera, and then it's actually hardwired into
with the Ethernet.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And so you're able to control the cameras via those two laptops, and then and wireless focus as well.
Well, that's where those Kipper Tie 2 terabyte cards will come in handy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the experience was amazing, and when you first go down there, you're kind of distracted and in awe of the technology and what you're seeing. I don't think it wasn't until a little bit later, after like the second dive, where I realized how small I was in the overall scheme of things.
In the world, yeah.
Yeah, and how rich the ocean is, and how sensitive of an environment it is. And so after that second dive, I really started to think beyond myself and the situation that I was in, and starting to think more of how important it is to protect our oceans, and how tied we are to that environment. And any subtle changes to the ocean are going to have ramifications for us here on land. And so I think that was the big thing. The biggest takeaway from that experience was how fragile we are. And so,
did you have a moment or a few minutes to just kind of absorb it all and just take it in, or you just hard and fast working the whole time?
No, because it's kind of like hunting a little bit, because you're sitting there just waiting. So at one point we were sitting on the seafloor for quite a while, and for hours, and just waiting for something to happen in front of us.
Was that squid interaction, was that the most interesting thing you saw underwater, or did you see something?
I mean, it's all interesting. That was by far the most epic thing that I've seen, like this massive battle that was happening in front of us. But, going down along the seawalls off the coast of Maine and Massachusetts, all right, you are seeing, so this particular one we were working with, NASA JPL was on the same expedition. They were testing this drone that eventually this is the first iteration of this drone, but eventually it'll be perfected, and it's designed to go to Europa and go to the Hadal Zone in Europa.
Oh, yeah.
Seas of Europa. And so that's the lead scientist and engineer for the drone for NASA. And so we had this amazing opportunity to spend time with them. And so that was really interesting to see. This is actually the drone coming up. So if you can imagine being on an ocean on some extraterrestrial planet, and this is what it would look like, you know, just nobody there, no human life, and this is what it would look like on some faraway planet. And you start thinking about that, and this thing is autonomous. This is obviously designed to be autonomous on, you know, millions and millions and millions of miles away from us on a unexplored planet, and this is what it would look like when it comes up. And so it's these little moments like this that just really blow your fucking mind. And also this scientist, he was great. So, literally a rocket scientist. And and it was funny because we had our Movi. I hope Free Fly isn't watching this. They probably are. But we were having problems balancing, and so she came over and she's like, "Oh, that's a really interesting device. She'd never seen one before." And I told her what it was, and she's like, "Oh, do you mind if I play with it and try and figure it out?" 3 hours later, she still couldn't figure it out. So it's like, hey, Free Fly, we had literally a NASA rocket scientist who could not figure out your gimbal and get it balanced correctly. So she may have been overthinking it a bit, but anyway, so the most interesting, I mean, you know, it's everything. I mean, it's these little moments of life with these coral that are off these. This is bubblegum coral is coming up here, but you know, seeing these things at 800 meters, and in some cases they're older than, you know, they're 3,000 years old, these fan coral. So so here we're pulling a plastic bag off of a coral about 900 meters.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one of the images I think that got into National Geographic, which is pretty cool. So that's the ship that we're on. So that's the platform. So as I like to call it, it's like a reverse mullet. It's party in the front and business in the rear. So all the subs and the engineering rooms and the wet labs are all in the back, and then all of the living quarters and the galley. And I got spoiled on this one because this is not a typical research vessel. You know, it's
so these ocean-going expeditions, how many have you been on now?
I've been on 3 total, I think. 3 total expeditions.
And you were on one recently, like in the last year, was it?
No, it was last was it last year? God, I don't know. Time is just cruising. That's when we did the sea mounts and the canyons off the coast of Massachusetts. And that's an environment that it's a national monument, and again, not getting into politics, and there's a reason for everything, but the current administration wants to rip that designation away and open up this environment to oil exploration. And again, you know, there are things down there that are older than the United States, and that have ramifications to our health here on land. In fact, the scientists that we were with from Hui, so we had discovered a new species of coral. I say we, the team. I was just filming, but
right, documenting.
They discovered a new species of coral. But there's evidence that and testing that they're going through now that there's actually the cure to Alzheimer's actually sits in some of these coral, and they're working on that now. And they think that the area that we were in was almost the birthplace of the coral reef that sits down along North Carolina and South Carolina. I don't know if you heard in the news, but there's like a 80-mile long coral reef down there. It's just gorgeous. and they believe that it's spawned from the activity up here, and that the ocean currents that bring it down there. And so along our East Coast, we actually have like 70 from Maine all the way down to North Carolina. There are 75 standalone Grand Canyons that are thousands of feet deep, not just hundreds, but thousands and thousands of feet deep. And all of those little canyons are part of a very delicate ecosystem, and they're all working together. And so if you were to drag fish this area that we were in, it wouldn't just affect this area, it would affect the coral ecosystem all along the eastern seaboard. And what would be the ramifications to us as humans? We don't know. So, I mean, but these are the things that make this for what we do for a living. I mean, it's great, because I otherwise would never have been I'm learning this shit, and it opens your eyes to what, to all of these different things that are happening in the world. It really is remarkable. Anyway.
We've been going just a little over 2 hours. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. So
it's up to you. I'm good. I don't know if we have anyone watching.
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
20, 25 people.
Oh, no shit. Oh, that's
yeah.
Cool. I was certain that, because who am I? I'm a nobody. So I was thinking, it's people, right?
It's your let's see.
I have
passion.
My wife, so I think we're good.
Right. Your passion and your direct, I don't know, your ability to be direct is what fascinates so many. And I shared this story with you either a year ago or 2 years ago, that it was your Red little short video for Red, where you're telling your story, that really inspired me to say, screw it, I'm done with this coat and tie work, and I'm doing this full time, because this is where my passion lies. And it's your ability to say that in such a way that captured onto my passion, and I said, boom, I'm doing it. So you made me quit my job. No, but I mean, that's people are absolutely interesting. Here's
that's awesome. That makes me feel good, man. I appreciate that. And it's, yeah, I mean, if a dipshit like me can do this for a living, I mean, I mean, it's
you got lots of people out here loving this, watching it, and yeah, keep going. Well,
what's so, I guess the big thing for me again is just learning all, it's access to these different worlds that are amazing. Michaela liked this one. I don't know if Michaela is still on, but
I'm pretty sure he is.
We were fortunate enough to spend time with Michaela and his family at their family home down in France, and while we were there, we went to a friend of theirs home, and I took a portrait of Michaela's wife, and their friend builds these gypsy caravans, and they're these beautiful caravans, and there's so much color. And so Michaela's wife put on this really beautiful outfit, and I had taken her portrait, and I don't know if he knew that I was doing that, but I'd gotten the portrait. It was a motion portrait, and then flash forward to oh shit, what's the event that goes on? I'm blanking right now, at Paramount Studios. City Gear.
Oh, City Gear, yeah.
So it was in the reel. That shot was in the reel, and we were Red Studios, and Mikel and I were sitting next to each other, and his wife comes up on an 80-foot screen. He's like, "Hey, that's my wife." That was pretty funny. But I got this great shot of their family friend, who's this amazing painter, and it's one of my favorite portraits. And I shot this with the Monstro. This is his studio, and this is one of my favorite portraits that I've taken. And I didn't know him at all, and we didn't have a lot of time spent with him, but you could tell just by his environment that this guy is prolific as far as the amount of paintings that he does. What you see back in the back are just a handful of his paintings. I guess he has another house or something where the bulk of his work is. And so this guy is always busy. And so I guess my first thought was, I'll get a portrait of him at his easel. And then I was like, no, because that's what, so I just had him kind of sit down, and I would imagine that, at some point during the day, he probably takes a nap here. And so I just had him sit down on this little day bed, and I was using the red, and so I have a nice little piece of motion of this as well. But it was very similar to this other shot that I got of this cowboy in his environment, and I really love, it's just lit by this skylight that's above him. And I really love that shot. And this was shot with the Monstro. I mean, this is pretty much straight out of camera. I think I desaturated, so I gave him a print. And I desaturated just a little bit because he's so surrounded with color all the time, because his paintings are very vibrant. And so I desaturated just took a little bit of color out of it, to the point where I almost didn't like the image. But it felt like that's what needed to happen, because he was in this quiet moment, but in his brain, he probably wanted to be at his easel. And so when I sent the print to Mikkel, I mailed it to him, and then Mikkel sent the print over and brought it to the family. I don't know if they liked it, but I liked it, and it's what I wanted. It's what I wanted to do, because in my head, here he is in a situation where he didn't want to be there. He wanted to be. It wasn't his nap time yet. He wanted to be at his easel.
Right.
By desat, and I think this actually might be the print that I printed, or the color that I printed. I think this might be the final.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to find out if he did or did not like it. But I mean, you're telling a story.
I liked it, and it's like it,
but you're telling a story of someone who's not just the painter; they're a person. There's a whole life to that person outside of the art, and yeah.
So, but these are the things, and some of the other so this is some of the other imagery from so this is from Gorongosa, and this is we got really lucky in this environment. So these are water buck, and there was this mist that has sat in this flood pan.
That's wild.
And that mist isn't. I guess it's I won't say it's a rare occurrence, but while we were there, it was rare for it to happen. And so we got really lucky. But I have this motion, and it made it into the final plays. If you Google National Geographic Last Wild Places, there's a dedicated website to this initiative, and there's 4 films that we've created for this initiative, and you can find all. And so, if you like the stills, you can find this in the Gorongosa piece, and you'll see the motion to this, and this as well. So this is that same mist, and yeah, and so it was. The colors out there. This is on an 800 millimeter lens, and this is the first time I legitimately shot wildlife professionally. I'm like we talked about. I'm shooting portraits mostly, and I'm shooting a 25, maybe 50, but this was on an 800 millimeter, and it was. I really enjoyed myself on that lens. I don't think I would want to shoot people. Because I just don't like that compression, but for wildlife, it's a different kind of story.
Scott is asking, how do you protect your awesome footage? Do you mirror your hard drives online, or do you use cold store footage? And he says it's been very informative.
So I have a backups of my R3Ds. In fact, something that I've been meaning to do is actually go through. I probably have, with all of my hard drives stacked around, I probably have more than a petabyte of data. And I need to do something with that, because there are drives that I haven't actually looked at in probably 2 years. And I'm hoping that they're not dead, but their chances are some of this is dead. So the really important footage, like this, I have on a G-Tech RAID. It's an 80 terabyte RAID, and then I've got a backup to another G-Tech RAID, and it's a RAID 5. And then I also have spinning just enterprise drives that I'll have a third backup to. I am actually thinking about doing some tape archival, but what I need to do first is actually go through, and and I would probably hire an assistant editor for this to go through and log all the footage and create R3D trims and get rid of all the garbage.
Right. So you're not storing unnecessary. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have zero overhead for my business. I mean, I've got this studio and I pay about $1,000 a month for this studio. And I rarely ever use it, but it's a good place for me to have a little home base when I want to get away from the kids. But other than that, everything else is paid for. And so I don't want to, but the reason I say that is because I try and keep the finances of our business in check. And, I don't make a lot of money. And so I earn a living and I'm able to, take care of my family. But for me to go out and spend $40,000-$50,000 on a server system is not practical. I can't do that.
Right.
And so, I have a safe deposit box in my bank where I put, internal drives that I have a little toaster that I can read from. But I'm also thinking about taking a lot of these R3D trims and going to tape for 20, 30-year storage.
Right.
But honestly, the big thing is, and I'm working on that now, and it's one of the things that I haven't done very well. I'll print some images, and I know I've gotten a lot of requests for prints, and I have sold quite a few prints. I don't market that I sell prints, but I've sold quite a few prints to like private buyers and stuff like that. And so in a way, I'm kind of archiving by printing, and I need to do more of that. And I have a lot of friends of mine that want prints, and I want to be able to give them those. And if I don't do it now, I'm afraid I'm not going to lose footage. So I'm working on that, and it's, managing 3 children and my travel. This is actually the longest with this COVID shit show. This is the longest I've been home in probably 4 years.
Are your kids like, go shoot something? Go.
Yeah, they want me. Yeah, they want me gone.
Do you read books, or do you?
Do I read, like?
Well, I mean, you're a book reader. I mean, is there a? Because there's a question. What's the best filmmaking book you've ever read? I
don't know if I've actually sat down and read a book about filmmaking. I didn't go to film school. I didn't go to photography school. Hi, Matt. I just saw Matt do close. There is a book, and I can't remember I think it was put out by the ASC, and I think it's called Talk on Cinematography or something like that. But it's a conversation with about 7 or 8 different cinematographers, and I have read through that. But no, I don't read filmmaking books or like that. Now, what I do read though is I've got a huge collection of photography books. And I have very obscure photography books and I have very common photography books. And those are my sources of inspiration for visuals. And so I'll go back to these books. And when we've got a job that's coming up, and I have a little bit of knowledge of what we're about ready to get ourselves into, then I'll go back and I'll find particular books and I'll go through and look at these images. And
are they more like reference images that you're looking at, or the more technical?
Reference, like when I'm out doing West stuff, I'll look at like Allard. I've got a bunch of his books, and I've got a couple books actually on Kubrick and his still photography, and a couple books on Kubrick and his filmmaking techniques. And so it's probably cliche to say, but he's definitely a huge inspiration of mine, because I see the world symmetrically. So that's how I do a lot of my frames. I'm very symmetrical with my frames, and it seems the easiest way to do it. So I don't. But no, I guess I don't really want to do that either, because I didn't go to film school. I don't have traditional training. And I think my work does show maybe a little bit of that lack of knowledge, maybe a little bit, but I think it gives me a different different experience. And now I'm not doing dramatic narratives. I'm not blocking typically. You know, I'm not doing any of that work. I do light, and I use primarily natural light and available light and practical lighting, and then I'll shape that lighting to get the look that I want, because I just don't like the look of studio lighting with the documentary work that I do. But for narrative film, I just don't do that, and so I never really felt the need to really go in and study that. Maybe I should, I don't know. But I think it would do me, in the way my brain works, it would do more harm than good. More than anything, I look at what my friends are doing, and I'm learning from them. Like I watch Mark Toya and what he's doing, you know, and I take inspiration from the craziness of the Diamond Brothers. And
Yeah.
I'm in this text group with a lot of these people that I really admire greatly. And
Well, the Diamond Brothers are going to be on next Friday.
are they? Nice.
Yep.
So I take a lot of inspiration from my friends and colleagues and what they're doing out in the world, and also, documentary filmmakers, the old masters, as filmmaking and paintings, and I study a lot of paintings. And there's one right now I'm really into. There's this really beautiful photographer. His name is Eric Madigan Heck, and he's based out of Connecticut. And he is an amazing artist. And I don't view photography as art. I view it as a craft. But he takes photography to an art form because of the way that he works with his images. He's primarily a fashion photographer. But Eric Madigan Heck, E-R-I-K, Heck, H-E-C-K, and you follow him on Instagram because the work that he does is truly is sublime work. It's gorgeous, and he's a big source of inspiration for me as well, as far as framing and when I'm shooting, whether I'm photographing or filming people. I really like his work. So to answer your question, no, I don't read a lot of filmmaking books. I read books generally that are nonfiction, some fiction, but mostly photography books is where I get a lot of my inspiration for my still photography and for my motion. And again, the motion with documentary is different because I try and frame. Framing is really important to me, and composition is really important to me. So what may look like a boring image to most people that are viewing this documentary, my hope is that they're not seeing it. But if you look at any of my frames, I really try and have lines in a very specific place. And it's simple things of not having a horizon cut through somebody's neck. I try and bring the shoulders above. I try and get lines of buildings and power lines, and like this shot here, this is a well-composed image, and it's a deep image, and it tells a story. And this was shot for an IMAX film, and that's why he's kind of low in the horizon. But this tells his story. He was actually this guy was born on that bed back there.
Duclos wants to know, if you could only use one lens for the rest of your life, what would it be for photography?
Oh, for photography. Oh, fuck, man. Too close.
That's a Matt question for sure.
Yeah. I do love that 35 Summilux 1.4. Summilux? Yeah, not Summilux. Summilux. See, I don't get into the details of that shit. It's a 35 1.4 Leica M. I absolutely love that lens, and it's the newest version. It's floating and spherical element, and it's a beautiful lens. I love that lens. In fact, that's what I took this shot with my buddy on the boat. What is that? Where's that shot? Oh, was that in the? Oh, what happened? Sorry.
I'll remove it from the stream and you can bring it up.
Oh, no, I just brought it back. I think that was my text. Oh, did I shut it out? I might have shut it out. Yeah, let me pull this up real quick, and I'll.
While you're pulling that up, Gavin has a question. What are your top starter beard tips?
Testosterone shots to the face. Man, I don't know. Fucking beer, maybe whiskey.
Do you do the beard wax or what?
No, fuck.
Beard oil. When I had my longer beard, I would use like almond oil because mine would really kind of like beard drift, I call it. And then I found that that it was almost like a wax that you put and you just kind of work it in.
Yeah.
It worked that well.
Yeah. Yeah, beer and whiskey, I guess, maybe. Okay, for too close, buddy. So I love these images. So this is shot with that 35-1.4 on my Leica M9. And I just love the way this looks.
That was beautiful. And what that was a Leica.
For still photography. Yeah. I really love that lens. It just has this roundness to it that you can't find in a lot of other lenses, and I really like that. For motion, I would just use that 25mm B speed that I got, if I could. In fact, with Microsoft, that 7-figure Microsoft job, 90, with the exception of the drone and the gimbal stuff, all of it was shot on the 25mm super speed. I had a conversation with the director, and I said, if I need to get close, I'll fucking walk in. You know, and so, and it worked out really nice, and it was a good blend for what we needed. I might use a 50 every once in a while, but I like that 25.
But you like you were saying earlier, you like to shoot basically wide open. Is it?
I try to. I've been playing more with deep focus recently. There might be I like the way that that 25mm renders the background when it's wide open, and in particular shots, it just has it has this painterly look to an environment that I really appreciate, and you can kind of see that, there. I really like that, but I also have been, and this is also, so this is, that one. So this was shot with the 25, and I love the way that it looks, and the way that it, I just love the way that it looks. I don't know if I could say it any better than that. It just looks, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good, and it captures everything that I see. And so for the VistaVision, I wish I could get, and Duke Close is the right person to talk to because he's a master at lenses, so maybe he could help me find one. But I would love to get this look of that 25mm. I would love to get the equivalent of that in an old lens for VistaVision for the larger sensor. If I could find that, I would use that a lot. But I also, deep focus too for a lot of this cowboy stuff that I'm doing. I've been playing with deep focus as well, and it's just, composition. And
that was a good shot there. I like that.
Thank you. I like these kinds of shots. Yeah, doing this cowboy, I get to experiment when I'm with these guys because I get to play along. Sorry, what?
No, I was gonna ask you a 2-part question. First part is, where has been your favorite spot on this planet to shoot? And then secondly, where have you not been that you want to shoot?
Not been is Antarctica. That's the only continent I haven't been to, and I want to go there. And I want to film, yes, I desperately want to go there. 100%. That would be, and I want to go to the part of Antarctica that's losing a lot of its cover, and where you have mountain ranges that are exposed there that aren't touched with snow. And so I would love to go and do landscape studies down there, and wildlife is cool, and I'd love to film that, but I'd love to film the wildlife in the context of these big landscapes, the landscape studies, and then if a small little piece of wildlife comes through the image, that would be wonderful. But my favorite place?
Yep.
Fuck, I don't know. That's so hard. I mean, I love the African continent. I had an amazing experience in Rwanda. I really love Rwanda. It's one of my favorite places I've ever been to. The people are amazing. What they're doing there is amazing. I think I might have a picture. And the environment there is just, yeah, here we go. So I like this image. It's, you know, it's just a funny thing, actually. We actually had gone out. So do you see this little minaret right here?
Yeah.
Where this little tower is? So we were actually in a small little helicopter. We'd taken off, and I think our pilot was only like fucking 15 years old. And we're flying out, and we're filming, and I knew enough about instrument gauges to make me dangerous. And so we were I had like a little bungee cord, like one you would buy at an auto shop, because we couldn't bring in gimbals with us. And I had little Kenyan gyros, you know, those little Kenyan.
Yeah, the little vibrant, yeah.
The oversized aspirin capsules.
Right.
So we had that set up with a bungee cord, and I had that hanging off of the airframe with just a little carabiner. And we were filming out, and I don't know why, but I think it was like the sun hit the instrument panel or something, and I was sitting up front, and I looked at the instrument panel, and I saw that our gas gauge was like down here when it probably should have been up here. And I looked at it, I was like, hey man, how many minutes of fuel do we have left? And he's like, I don't know, like 15, 10 minutes. So like, how far from the airport are we? So yeah, about 10 minutes. So yeah, turn the fuck around, man, and get us back to the fucking airport. And so this was the last shot that I got before we turned around and headed back to the airport. But what was crazy is before this job started, the director, he asked me if I was up for it. I was like, yeah. And he said, we're going to do some helicopter work. And I was like, great. And he said, as long as it's not a Russian helicopter, I will not get in a fucking Russian helicopter. Absolutely not. So if it's a Russian helicopter, I'm not going to come. And he said, no, it's no Russian helicopters. Well, the next day after we shot this, we had to fly by air 45 minutes out of the city to a national park, game reserve out there. And it was like straight out of a fucking Michael Bay film. We walk out of the terminal, we've got our gear, and you know how sometimes you get the runways, maybe we have a pilot on here, I don't know what they can call it, but sometimes the runways aren't perfectly flat. There's kind of
arc,
yeah. So we're walking out, and I hear the helicopter before I see it, and I knew right away it was a fucking Russian helicopter. It was I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, and I know the sound of this. It's an M1I7, I think it's called. And I knew the sound, and I'm like, Mike, this is a fucking Russian helicopter. He's like, no. And as we go across this roller, the helicopter reveals itself, and it's that guy. It's a fucking Russian helicopter. And at this point, we have the client with us, and you know. Anyway, we get into this helicopter, and well, the first thing you notice, so the crew chief runs over, and he's obviously Rwandan Air Force. And I said, hey, are the pilots Russian? He's like, no, they're Rwandan. He's like, but the Russians are the mechanics, and he points over to the shed. It's like, fuck. So as I get closer to the helicopter, one thing you'll know if you've ever been in a military helicopter, if it's clean, you need to worry. If it's a spotless helicopter, you need to worry. If it's covered in oil and duct tape and baling wire, then you're probably in pretty good shape. Well, this one was fucking spotless as we're climbing into the door there. And then in English, it had these like literally doormats, like 20 of them. This is big enough you could drive a small little Jeep into the back of it. It had all these floor mats. Then English said, welcome. Not welcome. Anyway, so we got out, we flew, we got the footage. We got back 2 weeks later. I'm back in the States, and I got an email from our contact there, fixer there, And he said, hey, you know that helicopter you in? The very next day, it fucking nosedived in the ground and killed everybody on board.
Oh no.
So
Gosh.
I will never get in a fucking Russian helicopter again. I don't care how much.
Here's a question, and you may have just answered it, but what's a moment on a project when things went totally sideways and wrong, and how did you adapt?
Well, that didn't go sideways, thankfully, till the next day, and we were already gone, and I didn't hear about it until much later, so that's good. Sideways. It's happened. I'm just trying to think of a specific. Well, the one that I can think of that was an incredibly expensive problem, but it was Mother Nature. It was on one of these expeditions out with on the ship where we were being chased by, I think it was Hurricane Florence. Is that the one that hit recently few years ago?
Yeah.
Came up from Florida.
Right.
And was coming to the eastern seaboard. Yeah. So we were out to sea, and we couldn't film for, I think, 13 days because the seas were too high. So we had like 5 or 6 meter seas, and then we had to seek shelter in Cape Cod Bay. And so we just sat there, and so that was, you can imagine how expensive these ships are to operate, and everyone that's on board, and not only that, but getting the footage that you need to get. So, so that was, you're just sitting around, and that's hard to just sit around.
Matt says, you just summarized our outlook on Russian lenses. Just don't do it.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I'm trying to think of from a logistic. Oh, okay. Here's one. So, this is actually for any of you that do international travel or are going to do international travel, or you want to do international travel within this world working. India is extremely difficult. And so I had a job over there where I was invited by the Indian government to come and teach. And then after that, I was taking a couple weeks to go up to Rajasthan towards the Pakistani border for personal work and go film up there. And that's one of those jobs where I'd actually called Microsoft to fund it. And so I called Microsoft and I said, hey, I'm here. I want to go up there and I want to film this area up there. And so they gave me a little bit of money, and so I was able to get up there. But go back to me flying into, I flew into Mumbai, and keep in mind, I'm there by invitation of the Indian government. And I get there, and they don't accept carnet. And for those of you who don't know what carnet is, it's basically a bonding insurance that guarantees that whatever you bring into the country, you're not importing it for sale, that you're going to leave with that same equipment. And so they put up a bond that if you do sell anything, that they'll cover whatever the fees are. And so India does not accept the carnet. And so it's a notoriously corrupt government there, and on the lower levels. I don't know about the higher levels, but on the lower levels, it's certainly very corrupt. And so going in, they spotted my gear. I gave them the form. This was a learning experience for me, because if I would have done it again, I wouldn't have flown into Mumbai. I would have flown from Dubai into one of the smaller Swiss cities, and I wouldn't have had this problem. But I did, and I showed them my form, and actually I had gotten this tip to take, create an official looking form and literally take a gold, those gold ribbon stickers that you got as a kid when you did good work, to put that on there to make it look official. So I had like this thing, and I'm thinking, I'll get to it. So I gave them the thing, and they said, no, you can't come in with your equipment. We're going to have to confiscate it. And I had all my lenses, my Dragon at the time, and so that was going to kill the project. And so I kind of raised a shitstorm. I could sense that they wanted to bribe. I wasn't going to give them fucking any money. because I did have an official invitation. And so I ended up going into with the head customs at the official at the Mumbai airport. And I tried to sweet talk him. And I was like, yeah, hey, I'm here by invitation, and I need this gear in order to do what I need to do. And he was just being a real hard ass. So I thought I'd throw out, I'm gonna have some cinematographers and from Bollywood and all these high end, which was true. All these really high end Bollywood cinematographers were gonna come, and I was gonna talk to them. And he says, I hate Bollywood. I'm from the south of India. It's Hollywood for me. Well, right then I knew I was fucked, because he had a stake up his ass for Bollywood, because he's Hollywood. And so anyway, they ended up confiscating all of my equipment. But while he was going through all my bags, he opened up one of my cases that had my super speeds in there. And I had a bigger coat on with deep pockets. And while his back was turned, I grabbed 3 of my lenses. I grabbed my 25, my 50, and my 85, and I put them in my pockets, and I was just sit there.
Wow.
And anyway, so they confiscated all of my equipment. Thankfully, and I'll talk about this after. Thankfully, Red has an office there, and my friend Johnny Francis, was very close with the guys at Red there, knew them, and he was my fixer for this whole trip. And so they were able to get me a camera. And because I had taken my lenses, I had my lenses. And so they were able to kit me out so that I could finish my job. And so I was thinking the equipment was going to be gone when I left. But when I got to the airport on my departure, there was my gear.
Really?
I got all my gear back. Yeah, surprisingly. But that was a shit show. And that was probably the worst experience I've had with travel. Because if I didn't have those connections in
you'd been done.
I would have been screwed. And so the biggest tip that I can give, and this is particular to the Red world. I don't know if it really works in the Canon or ARRI world. Maybe it does. I don't know. But Red is a very tight family. And it doesn't matter if you're super, super high end like Mark Toya, or if you're super, super, low end. I make it a habit during pre-production to find out who on Red user or within the Red world is in that area that I'm going to. And I will reach out to them and say, hey, I'm coming in. Can I count on you for, if I have a camera go bad or equipment or cables or whatever, can I call you and get your help? And 100% of the time you get a yes back. And that's a big thing that you should do. Even if I was going as a still photographer with my Leica, I would still reach out to my friends and even people that I don't know, obviously, that are in this world, just to let them know I'm coming in. And quite frankly, that saved my ass in Nicaragua, because there was a bad situation that came up, and I had to get out of the country, and I had a local contact there, and he helped me coordinate getting in touch with Jared. I don't know if he wants me to tell this story, but I'll abbreviate it. But I got a hold of Jared. I told him the situation that I was in. He got in touch with my wife, and they were able to get me out of the country in about 12 hours. And so, and without having without going through that exercise in pre-production, I would have been scrambling, and I would have probably been in a world of shit, not having those contacts already being in touch with these people before I even came there on the job.
And it's truly amazing, and it's 100% true. And people make fun of it. I don't think they really have an idea, but how much of a family Red is. They're just people, and everyone loves the connections that Reds make to each other. And it's
yeah, and people make fun of it, and I get that, oh, you drink the Kool-Aid, you're a bunch of cult, it's a cult. It's not a cult. And yeah, maybe we drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, but you have to keep in mind that, what Red did, the camera and the technology, I'm talking about the individuals, although obviously they obviously are they created this camera, so they're an important part of this discussion. But the camera opened up the world to guys like you and I to have access to this level of technology at a price point that we could afford, so that we could go out and do what we do. And no one else had done that prior. And so I think because of that, you are introducing a world of individuals that have something to say. Now they have the technology to say it and have access to a larger platform. And so if you want to call that a cult, I guess you can go ahead and call it that. But it's more camaraderie. And I'm, being a product of the United States Marines, that's really important to me. And having this camaraderie and these people that I can count on. I mean, to be fair, Scott and I, I don't know you that well. But I know just through meeting you when we met in Vegas, that we share a commonality in our quarks mingled. And so, at least from my end. So,
yeah, no.
And so, meeting you and having this thing in common allowed us to have a conversation. And, and I think that, that is the, for friendships. And so,
absolutely. I mean, it brings down walls and allows people to connect on something. Yeah. And it makes,
I'm getting a little hot here.
Yeah, no, yeah. I desperately love the Red community and just everything. I mean, Red really did, disruption is a huge term that everybody loves to use, but they disrupted the hell out of the film industry with the Red One. They turned it over on its ass. And I mean, it's for the better. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with that it's for the better now, but they sure as hell did then.
Yeah, and I never got into the conversation about RE and Red and all that bullshit. That's all bullshit. Those conversations, use whatever the fuck you want to use.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter. And just get out there and create some shit. And it's hard to do this. I mean, Wally just asked his question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Creative.
What keeps you inspired?
During specific to what he's asking, specific to what we're going through right now,
right.
It's fucking hard. It's hard because you're getting hit from all of these external forces. And, right now, my particular moment right now is focused on my 3 children. And my wife is working 100% from home, and she's working long days, and she still hasn't texted me, so she's being great. But right now, that's the only thing I'm thinking about is my family and their mental well-being, and so what I have been doing actually is I gave my 5-year-old son my Fuji X100T, that. And because I came out one day and he had my 5D Mark IV, and he was like, and I don't have a strap on it, and he's like walking around with it. And I was like, okay, don't drop it. And I showed him how to use it. But then he was really struggling to hold it up. And so I gave him my Fuji X100, and I put it on automatic, and I showed him how to turn it on and how to focus. And so I've been working with him to just kind of guide him through that interesting journey he's on right now. So he's just running around now, snapping pictures like crazy. And I just said, go around the house and take pictures of all your favorite things in the house. And he got a picture of me, he got a picture of his mother, while she was going to the bathroom. I don't know if she knows that. But
that's a very kid thing to do,
yeah. But he got a picture of, Alexa. He took a picture of Alexa, which is funny, and he took a picture of a lot of his stuffed animals, and so I guess I'm kind of looking at what he's doing right now, and that pure innocence to image making, and not thinking about composition, and not thinking about light, and not thinking about anything. He's just going around taking pictures of his favorite things, and that's an interesting thing to watch and pay attention to. will that affect me? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
It would be interesting to see some of those. Is he posting any of those? No, obviously not the one, but I mean, is he posting anything?
No, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to I'm going to curate some of the photographs and start posting those on Facebook. Yeah, it might be fun.
I mean, it's kids. I mean, my two are old, are grown up now, but I mean, it's so wild to remember, because you don't remember it, you forget it as you become an adult. But the innocence and the way that they look at things and the way that they're always studying, it was such an amazing, I call it a re-journey through life, watching my kids grow up. And I mean, they provided so much inspiration to me that I had once lost. And I think that'd be cool to see it again, just to see it in other people.
Yeah, I mean, and truthfully, when I'm working, and I hate to even call it work, because I really enjoy doing this for a living. I'm extremely fortunate in that I get to do this and create and have a living doing it. I'm extremely lucky. And, I mean, how many people have an opportunity to work with National Geographic? I mean, that was a dream fucking come true. And I'm so fortunate and so lucky that things worked out that I was able to do that. And I never would take that for granted. And so being able to go out and do this, and I am like a kid when I'm working. And I think this just reinforces it, watching my 5-year-old, that it's just pure joy that he's having. And I like to think that's how I am on the inside of my brain when I'm working. Now, there are external forces that affect that, and there's production issues and logistical issues, and those become difficult, and sometimes I'll get pretty stressed out about that and pretty heated about it. And I've had a couple of my friends that have worked with me at certain points. They'll call me and say, "Hey man, you're being a real asshole to me right now," and so I have to dial back, because I am so focused on the task at hand that sometimes I'll forget. And so that happens too. And so you just have to keeping that. And so I guess, Wally, seeing that, I guess that's the exercise I'm going right now, is having this, being able to all that other shit doesn't matter. As long as everyone is feeling the same way and everyone's having a good time out there, it's going to be a great shoot. So what can I do as an individual to lift my team while I'm out there and keep them going? I guess that's one of them. From a practical standpoint, I was going to go out and do these photographs of people on the doorsteps and shit like that, but then everyone started doing it. I was like, wow, fuck, I'm gonna do it. So one thing I did want to do is I did want to get in. I have some friends that work at one of the local emergency rooms here, and I did want to go out and photograph that. And I had sent some emails, and I ultimately I haven't been able to do that, and I'm actually glad that I didn't get any kind of authorization to do that, because authorization meaning I didn't get some official that says Ivan is shooting for us to go and capture this stuff, because I think I would have put my family at risk being in those environments, and so I'm kind of glad that didn't work out. Although my heart still wants to be there. So,
right.
You have to balance that stuff.
For sure. Do you have stuff that's starting to rumble in the background for the future here, like projects coming up? Is it starting to? I mean, can you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, or?
Oh yeah, I've got that's one other exercise I've been going through, is going through all of my books and really thinking about how this is going to affect us as human beings, and how it's going to affect our general day-to-day interactions, and how is that going to affect my portraiture and my work from a personal project perspective, and how I can, how is that going to affect how I see the world now when I'm out there. And so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, I've got a couple things that I'm processing what I'd like to do, and Yeah.
There was an image in your Red Collective video. I wonder if you have it. I think it's the cowboy in the rain, or like leaning up against the barn, or trying to.
Yeah.
I just remember a very moving image.
See if I got that here. Yeah, that was Kelly.
Oh, that was Kelly?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess it was. Yeah, I should see the.
Do you have it? I don't know.
I don't. It's on your Instagram.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay. Fairly certain I saw it there. Let me see if I can.
We'll see if you can find it. I'll look for it here.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was such an amazing.
Yeah, that was shot with an 85 millimeter old Nikon I think it was a 1.4.
Yeah, there it is. That's Kelly. Yeah, for sure. I can't pull it down. Let me pull it up here. I have to pull Google Chrome.
Yeah, that was those photographs, that portrait of Kelly with the red coat on, that was really the first portrait that I shot that way. And it really felt good to me. And that kind of started that journey of getting portraits like that. That shot of Kelly that you're pulling up,
yep.
So that shot was more for a motion piece. But because I was shooting the red, I was, so while I was shooting it, I wasn't thinking of it as a still, a portrait photograph. Sure. But afterwards, I really looked at that series of clips and I saw that image. Yeah. And yeah, that was a great moment.
Let's see here. So this one, okay, what was that photo there? Was of the window?
So this is a photo that I made, and I think it's kind of, to Wally's question, I have been going back through a lot of my photographs, and I've recently have been posting photographs that just kind of, I think, capture the environment there that we're in right now. Not to lessen, so this photograph was taken, we were shooting a documentary on the Cree Nation up in northern Quebec. And this is at an elder camp, and it's where the elders go on their own, and they have their own little camp set up. And and we were shooting another scene, and I saw this happening like 15 feet to my right. And so I grabbed the camera off the tripod and I hauled ass through the snow and I framed this up really quick. And this is the image, the still that I selected, but what's happening here is this elder is walking through there and they have one of their little kids there. And the little kid had poked his face out of that window and was looking at me and then went back in, and then she stood there in silhouette. And in particular for the documentary, so we were telling the stories about kind of the residential schools and where they would take kids from these tribes. They would literally kidnap these kids from the tribes and take them to schools, government and religious-run schools in the city, and as they put it, teach the savage out of them. And it was a horribly abusive situation that they were going through. And so that has scarred them, and that's why with a lot of the reservations across in North America, you have a high alcohol and substance abuse, in large part because of obviously the experience they went through, and in specifically the residential schools in Canada. Now, I came to find out afterwards, because they don't teach this to you in public schools, that here in the United States, we also have these residential schools. And it's still a topic of dinner table conversation today. And the last one, was in the late 1900s. And it wasn't until recently when the Canadian government, and Bob can probably speak to this, but it wasn't until recently when the Prime Minister actually issued an apology letter to the Cree Nation, a letter. Oops, sorry about that. And that was the extent of their apology. But you know, these families and these kids are still suffering from what they went through, and so that's what we were filming up there. And I thought that captured that idea in a still image pretty well. And then going back while we're in the shit show that we're in now, I started focusing in on images like this, and I found this one. I think this is pretty much. Not everyone is feeling this way, but I think the people that are really suffering through this, maybe because they're sick or they're just, you know, being locked into a house for a long amount of time. Maybe in New York, where you're living in a small apartment, this kind of gives that feeling to me. So.
When you're shooting portraiture on the red, do you use an EVF or are you using the display on top?
I use LCD, and I use LCD because of situational awareness. So I want to see everything that's happening around me.
Gotcha. Okay.
With the EVF, I'm not able to do that, and I can't be as mobile as I need to be.
Fair enough.
And I think that Mark does that really well. I think he shoots. Mark shoots with an EVF, but I think he also shoots with an LCD as well. But I think he's primarily an EVF so he can block out the world, because he's doing these huge mammoth productions, and he's got all these fucking people around him. And so I think he uses the EVF to block all that out so he can focus on his art.
Yeah, his tip of using the EVF and putting in AirPods and playing music was genius. I had never considered that before.
Is that what he does?
Yeah, he said when stuff like B-roll or stuff that needs to get captured and he doesn't want anybody bothering him, he pulls out the world completely with AirPods. And I mean, you're listening to music, you're in the zone, your vision is only through the lens. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I've got horrible vision, so the way I do that with the LCD is if I'm shooting landscapes or something like that, I'll just take my glasses off, and all I see is a blur in my LCD. And so I'm just looking at colors and shapes at that point, and that helps me focus and kind of block things out that are around me. That's interesting. I'll try the music thing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely doing that the next time I'm out. Travis is asking, how important is taking on passion projects for you, or how do you go about taking on something?
It's super important, and you know, I've been pretty focused on the rural West. It's a long-term project I've been working on, and so I guess how do you take on something like that? If something, you know, piques your curiosity, you know, start investigate it, start reading articles and really doing some research on whatever the subject matter is, and then grab your camera and just go there. You know, oftentimes when I'm going somewhere, I don't know who I'm going to encounter. I know there might be a region that I'm going to, but I don't know who I'm going to meet. You know, sometimes I'll literally just walk in, Teamer. Literally, I'll just walk into an environment. I've done it more than a few times where I'll just go knock on a door. And I remember this one time I actually saw this guy from the road, and his house was like in this farm field, probably like 500 feet off the road. And I saw this little old dude just hunched over like this, and he had his beanie on, but he had it on in a way where it was kind of like this big cone head kind of thing. And it hunched over, and it was an interesting. It caught my eye. His name is John, and I went over there and I knocked on his door, and I was like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And I introduced myself, and I told him, you know, I'm a photographer, and he invited me in. And I ended up spending like 4 hours with him in his home, and he gave me a tour of his entire house, and I was filming the entire time. He was giving me a tour. And he turns out this guy's this really amazing painter and this artist, and he was showing me all of his work. I mean, like really fucking good. Mostly etchings that he does. And but I noticed as we were walking around, he's taking me to all these different rooms. I asked him, you have a lot of strange little rooms here. What's going on? I mean, it's like it's abnormal. There's no kind of, and he said, well, sit down. And so I sat down, and he sat down, and he started telling me about he suffers from extreme depression, like debilitating depression. And he's probably 85 years old. And he said, anytime I start feeling this way, his first inclination is to put a fucking gun, And so rather than do that, he just builds little rooms.
Huh.
So he'll just build, we walked into this little room that was maybe 6 feet deep off his bedroom. And it was just two curtains. And you open it up and you walk, and really well built. You walk in at 6 feet deep, maybe 8 feet wide. And it was just his library. And he built this library. And there's these big windows on each flank of this room. And so I couldn't go all the way in with him. So I was kind of out, and he had the curtains open. Well, then he turns around and walks out, and he stops, and just his shoulders and his head are poking through the little curtain. And so they're framing him. And I got this great image of him. I don't have it up, but I got this great image of him with this vacant stare. And looking at it, we were in his bedroom at this point, or I'm standing in his bedroom, and I look behind me at what he was looking at, and he has one of his paintings above his bed that has kind of the same shape, but it was this very scary painting. You could tell he painted this at the deepest part of his depression, and he has this hanging above his bed. But that image mirrored what I was seeing as him poking his head through this thing. So follow your curiosity. Don't be afraid to knock on doors. And if someone even piques your interest, there's a reason they piqued your interest. And I go back to the quarks. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's science, man. And science, all this is science and math. And so if someone piques your interest, there's a reason they piqued your interest. There's a reason that you're focusing in on them. Go fucking follow that person, and just don't be afraid to go up and introduce yourself, because then you're coming from a genuine perspective. And go and talk to that person and say, I don't know why, but you're super interesting, and I would really love to, I'm a photographer. I would really love to get your portrait, and let's hang out for a little bit.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Jason wants to know how much you practice cornhole. There's obviously some stories there.
Oh yeah. we do this cornhole competition. You know what cornhole is, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we do this little competition in my backyard every year, and I was lucky enough to have Jason and his team in town while we were doing this, and so I invited them over, and we played some cornhole. Yeah.
Well, I
love Jason. Those guys are great.
Oh yeah, Jason and Josh both, and his team. I know. Well, his team varies all the time, but yeah, there's great people on there.
Yeah.
I successfully got you over 3 hours.
Yeah, man. Thank you for doing that.
But I don't want to get you in trouble with your wife. So you want to?
Well, I'm looking good. I mean, if you have any other questions, how many? Do we lose anybody, or what do we have?
No, we're still about 23 people tuned in. Anybody got any last questions for Ivan?
Let me text my wife real quick and just see if we're
good. I don't want to be the guy that your wife's like, you are never ever talking to that guy again, because you're.
I don't know. At this point, I'm starting to think, should I try and beat Mark? But I don't think I can, because he's awesome.
Oh, well, yeah. The hard one is Charles Pappert. He was 5 hours.
Oh, I'm not doing 5 hours.
He just kept on going. And I exhausted the battery in my camera, had to replace it in the middle of it. I had to go to 10-1. Oh, it was.
I just texted my wife. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to chat more. It's COVID, so I got nothing better to do unless my wife tells me I got something to do.
Right. Let's see what else you got there. What's that? Scroll down a little bit. Scroll down a little more. More. Yeah, the far right on the bottom, middle now, that white. Up.
This one?
Yeah. What is that? Oh, that's
yeah. So
clean
this
room.
is actually, this was a commercial job, and this was just one of those moments that I took a photo for myself. And this was at, it's called IMF Flash, and it's just south of Salt Lake City, Utah, and they actually manufacture all the SSDs for Apple. And so this is a photosensitive room, and that's hence the light. And so they build the wafers, and it's a clean room. This is actually a funny story. It's a clean room. It's a massive clean warehouse or assembly area, and we had actually flown in, and it was a fairly, not a large production, but we had to have a dolly and things like that. And so we had called up a couple rental houses in Salt Lake City, and there were two big productions that were Mark. There were two big productions that were going on in Salt Lake City, and so we couldn't get a hold of the dolly. And they said, all we got is this fucking piece of shit skateboard dolly. Do you want it? It's like, oh fuck. I mean, if that's all you got, yeah, we'll have to get it. So we reserved it. We showed up, and we went to the rental house, and we walked into this rental house, and the kid, he's like 22, 23. He meets us in the parking lot of this rental house. It's a big rental house. Definitely a mom and pop rental house. They told him who we are, and oh yeah, follow me. My dad's got this paperwork. So we go through this labyrinth of a hallway and back to this back office. And as you get closer to where we had to be, the smell of scotch just started growing and growing and growing. And we get back to this back room, and there's Dad, completely fucking shit-faced. He's like, you're here for the skateboard dolly. That thing's a piece of shit. It's covered in cow shit. And I didn't have the time to clean it. And I'm thinking, fuck, man. And he's like, I won't even charge you for it. Just take it. So we took this fucking dolly, and we took off some of the cow shit, and we showed up this clean room place, and they saw that we had to bring that in there. And the poor guys, man, they ended up cleaning it for like an hour, and they wrapped it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. But this is at IMF Flash. It was really interesting environment to be in because again, I like clean symmetry, and
it's a very Willy Wonka look, though. It's
yeah. You don't know what's going to happen when you walk through that door.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Phil, what's your earliest introduction to photography? Earliest image making? Was that Browning camera?
Yeah, that was a Brownie camera when I was 8. When I got that camera from my grandfather, and I started making photographs then. And then, like I said, so that was my first introduction. That was like snapshots of family, and like I said, setting up my little cars and making them look big in the neighborhood and things like that. And then I started moving into other things. But like I said, after that experience of having everything stolen after the Marine Corps, I gave up on that for quite a while, and I got into other things.
Right.
Yeah.
Christopher asked, the biggest lesson you've learned that you could pass on to the younger guys in the industry?
Don't be an asshole.
It's a fantastic lesson.
Don't be an asshole. Don't take it serious. Don't take this shit too seriously, I think is the big thing. Yeah, it's hard. I've learned a lot of lessons, actually. In my previous life, I was an asshole. I was not happy in my life doing what I did for a living. And so I was not a nice person to be around. And so once I found what I really loved doing, I still had some of those traits follow along with me, and it took some very good friends of mine to shake that out of me, and hopefully surround yourself with people that'll tell you that, and they'll help shape you and bring you along. No one really does any of this shit alone. You always have friends with you and mentors, and Mark keeps fucking But I love Mark, and Mark, I consider him a really close friend, and I've learned a lot from him. And he is such a joy to be around, and he loves what he is doing so much. And he's gone through some hard bits, and he's gone through some really high moments, low moments, but he's always been this steady force for me. And I talk to him quite a bit, and so surround yourself with people like that will call you out, and will also tell you when you're doing some really awesome things, and that will help shape you. So I guess that's the biggest. Don't be an asshole. Don't take yourself too seriously. You know, you're never gonna know everything, so always be open to learning shit, I guess. I mean,
and surround yourself with people where your corks align. Yeah,
surround yourself with people that genuinely care for you and want to see you succeed and fulfill you in whatever way you need to be fulfilled. And the other thing, I guess, from less of a emotional part of that, do as much in pre-production and planning as you can. Have your shit together, because when you get on the job and you've planned it out, and you kind of, I always try and think of worst case scenarios. Most laugh wins. That's right. Think of worst case scenarios, and if you're ready for those worst case scenarios, then everything else will be easy. And so have a plan in place. Keep your shit organized as much as possible. If you open up my Pelican case, it's OCD organized. And so if I got hurt or if I had to leave, anyone could pick up any of my gear, and within just a few moments, they'll know where everything is, and they'll be able to find what they need. So that's one of my things. I'm very particular about how I pack everything, and try and consolidate as much as possible to bring a minimal kit with me. And everything is packed in it. So, I mean, I even have my little bolts, medium bolts, large bolts. I have them in separate little Ziploc, little cocaine baggies, So,
are you one of the guys that takes care of their equipment where it doesn't even look like it's ever been used?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I definitely, you're going to get scars here and there, but I definitely
not intentional.
Yeah, I take care of my kit for sure.
People always make fun of mine because it looks brand new, but I'm like, I take care of everything I own. I mean, it's OCD.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had a camera go down. We've never been in a situation where we've had a camera go down, and I think that's in part because we take care of our equipment. That's
awesome.
Yeah,
so
but Go ahead.
I was going to say, any parting wisdom, any thoughts? Kind of wrap this puppy up and put it in the archives.
No, I guess just have fun.
Having fun is probably more to do with whether you like your job or not, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, have fun, take the shit seriously, when it needs to be taken seriously, obviously, but have fun, and if something piques your interest, follow it if you're able to.
Right.
Follow it, and who knows where it'll lead you. I mean, I followed this, and I'm fortunate that I have a lot of really good friends because of it. So yeah, it's good.
Indeed. There you go. Jason says, enjoy what you do and who you do it with. Otherwise, what's the point?
That's right.
So truthful. Okay, my friend, I've been pretty impressed with you. I think we had a really good interview going on. Great words and insight, really useful. Yep, there you go. I think everybody really enjoyed it. I'm going to wrap this up. I'll drop you down below, but don't hang up yet. I've got a couple things to say after we're done here. But
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, and I really appreciate you being on and sharing both your art and yourself for everyone for over 3 hours. And IvanAgerton.com is where you can find him. He's anywhere and everywhere. And here comes all the thank yous coming through. Those are all for you, man. So thank you so much. Let me close this out and I'll be right back to you.
Sounds good.
There we go. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, put them down below. Try to read and respond to all of them. I'll make sure that they get to Ivan if you have further questions. Also, remember Cameron Michael. I will go back and post in YouTube, but the GoFundMe for him, really help him out. He's a fantastic guy. I look forward to hopefully getting him on here someday as well. But as always, as I like to leave it, don't let your passions center around your life. Let your life center around your passions. Thanks.